And we are live with today's 220-1101 Core 1 A+ study group. This is our pre-show. So you're looking at the back of my head as I try to figure out if I have all of the things that I should have going. This is my last check where, oh, I'm not recording. You don't see any silence down there, do you? Let's get these guys recording. Record button there, record button here. That's better. Now we got some activity down at the bottom. Let's get that other one going. There we go. Down at the bottom. I like it. Media looks good. I think that's in good shape. We're back to this. Hey, chat room. Let's pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. Pop out the chat. There we go. Very nice. Hi, everybody. Okay. We are good. This is so good. We've got a lot to do today. I've got all new questions, of course, for the 220-1101 exam. Some folks in the chat room already talking about the next version of the A+ exam. And I will talk to you in the after show about what you should expect there and why you probably do not want to jump to that one quite yet. Kind of the whole story's now done. You don't have to show up now. Don't do the new one yet. That's my recommendation. That's not the recommendation for everybody, but I'd say the vast majority of us. We are in that particular place. This is the only version that is currently available that we will go through today. So folks already have been asking me, hey, where's the new stuff? Like, well, there's no new exam. There's nothing there yet. So that's how it works. We've got plenty to do. It's such an exciting time, though, because there's so much happening behind the scenes. It's almost like having a baby. You're working on it for months and months and months and months and months, and there's nothing to show for it, really. You can sort of look around and think, something's about to happen. And then finally, we're at the point where we're creating content. Videos are getting edited. Course notes are getting created, practice exams are getting updated. Those types of things are happening behind the scenes. And it's so nice to kind of finally see things put together into a very nice package kind of thing. We're in good shape here. We just need to, of course, we have the Core 1A+ study group today. And our Core 2 study group is 2 days from now on Thursday, local time, whatever time it is. As many of you know, in the United States, we changed over our time on Sunday, and I still don't know what day it is and what time it is. So it's just kind of how it works. If you would like to stick a pin in our virtual pin cushion here in front of me, this is the one you see on the screen here. You can put a virtual pin cushion in by following the URL on your screen. This will also be the URL that we do or that we use for all of our questions and answers. So once you visit that URL, just stay on that page. Just stay on professormesser.com/QA. It's the one right here behind me. That's down there. That's the one you should use. So you go to that page and you'll be able to see all of the questions. You'll be able to answer the questions, and you will be able to ask questions for the after show. There you go. So that's it. Yeah, this is the pre-show. So for those of you in the chat room wondering why you're looking at the back of my head, you will see me eventually. Eventually, you'll see this. Don't worry. There will be an actual study group coming up, but I've got 5 minutes left. We really figure out this. And there's Daniel with the Chicago reference. Well done, sir. Let's see if we can figure out if I have all the buttons pushed here that I should. It looks like. We've been doing a lot of shooting of video here, so I feel like nothing has really changed in front of me. Normally, I have to really do a lot of different things and get them together, and this time, not so much. It's all sort of ready to go. We're in great shape there. All right. Let's see if... Yeah, I checked questions earlier, so those are good. Chat room is here and checking in. You guys are great. This is all good. This is all good. Some folks saying they took Core 2 before they took Core 1. Not entirely unusual. It really doesn't matter what order you do them in. They are basically standalone exams. So you aren't at a disadvantage or an advantage, generally speaking, if you take one before a different one. Normally, people, I think, tend to go towards the thing they know the most about. So if you've worked a lot with Windows and you're very familiar with the operating system, I think people tend to start on the Core 2 because that's where that content is. But if you've built your own machines, you've built your own computers, you're very familiar with the hardware, you know what the nomenclature is for all of the internals of a PC, then you might even want to start with Core 1. It just depends on what's more comfortable to you. Both of them, generally speaking, have about the same level of difficulty. So there's not one that's easier or harder than another one. They're basically the same. So I have to figure that out. Oh, we got plenty to go through. If you have questions you would like to have answered, you'll notice at the top of the page, if you go to professormesser.com/QA, there will be an option there and you can submit a question for the after show. So this first hour is where I ask you the questions. And then the second hour, I go through and answer your questions. So we'll go through all of that. Thanks for being here. Thanks for checking in with us. There's a lot. Is there a clear final date for the 1102? Yes. We will talk a lot about dates and times and that kind of thing in the after show, but officially it is September 25th is the retirement date for the 1101 and 1102 exams. And that's why I say if you're currently studying for the current version of the exams, that's the version you should be studying. Quite honestly, that's the only one available. So why wouldn't you study that one? We'll talk about release dates and retirement dates in the second hour, so as not to confuse us too much. Our focus now is taking care of this. Okay, passed your 1101, so you need to pass the 1102 before September 25th, which is over 6 months from now. So you're good. Just keep working on what you're doing. I think a lot of people really want to, I did say September 25th. September. Do you remember September 25th? That's not the song, but that's when it is. So just keep that in mind. A little Earth, Wind, and Fire for all of you checking in today. Thank you for being here. We got a lot to do. We got a lot going on. We will start this at the top of the hour. 2 minutes to go. We've got a lot. We just had the emails go out a couple minutes ago. So we will see what makes the most sense. You guys are asking some great questions in the chat. I would recommend for you to submit those questions using the tab at the top of your screen at professormesser.com/QA. Best place to go. We got a lot going on. Ooh. Okay. It's a nice day here. Hopefully everybody's having a good day wherever you are. We are ready to get going with this. We got about 30 seconds to go. Am I ready? I don't know. We'll find out in a moment. You folks are checking in from all over the place. This is here. So I'm looking at my screen here. You guys are everywhere, all over the world, checking in. Thank you so much for being here. So nice to have everyone. Plus, it helps a lot when you're asking questions that people can actually answer the questions. So yes, these do still count for CEUs. Listen in during your first hour for information on how you can obtain a CEU. For watching that, this has now changed 12 o'clock. That means I need to start up my keynote. I need to push the button to get the green light. I do have a green light. We hit the play button. Things happen over here, which means it's time to start the study group, everybody. Here we go. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the March 2025 Professor Messer A+, specifically the Core 1 A+, even more specifically, the 2011-01 version of the Core 1 A+. It's our study group that we do every month for these particular versions. Today, we are doing the Core 1 exam. And of course, we have our live stream in a couple of days for the Core 2 exam. So this is one of these weeks where we have multiple live streams. And if you're studying for your A+ exam, you might want to come back for the second one on Thursday. Thank you so much for being here. During this first hour, I will be asking you questions that come directly from the CompTIA exam objectives. And in the second hour, I'm going to take your questions. So if you would like to participate, either answering questions interactively online, or you want to be able to answer questions on the live stream side, I want to give you this URL, which is professormesser.com/QA. That will get you to the front end that is run on our Vevox front end. So if you see Vevox on the screen, that's what that's referring to. And I'll have a question for you. In fact, if you follow that link, I've got a question that we went through last month. This is what we call our rewind question, because it's a question that you've seen before, but let's see if you really remember what this question is about. The question that you're going to find, if you go to that link, is: a corporation orders new PCs with two 16 gigabyte memory modules instead of one 32 gigabyte memory module. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Is it faster memory bus performance, lower power usage, an increase in available RAM capacity, redundant memory storage, or increased SSD transfer rates? Now, our standing rule in the chat room, for those of you that haven't been here before, is you do not answer this question. Well, to give you the right lower third, please don't answer the question in the chat room. Instead, you want to go to that link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer this question. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. And we will come back to that question in just a moment. There are a lot of things I want to talk to you about regarding the current exam. We will go through more of a detail of what's happening with the next version of the A+ exam, which still is not out yet, so don't worry. But we will talk about release dates, retirement dates, and what you should be studying for in the after show. So if you're interested in that, stick around for that second hour. We will be going into a lot of detail there. Right now, however, I'm going to ask you some questions that come from the latest exam, and you're going to answer them. If you are following us on our social media, you probably already know that our entire A+ course is available at professormesser.com/YouTube. There's no registration. There's nothing held back. There's nothing behind a paywall. Every one of our videos is available for you to watch for free. Every minute of every video is out there. We also do daily A+ pop quiz questions. So if you go out to Twitter or X, whatever you'd like to call it, or Instagram or LinkedIn, or you would like to get information about what we are doing on with anything that we have on our social media, just type in professormesser.com/ the name of that site. But you can certainly find, get it delivered to your email as well. Some great things there. If you have not subscribed to our YouTube channel, this is a great time to do so, because there will be a flurry of activity occurring over the next couple of months, and you will want to be a part of that, because there's a lot of new things that will be added to the YouTube channel. That's at professormesser.com/YouTube. Also let you know that sometime in this first hour, I'm going to give you information on how you could earn a continuing education unit credit, or CEU. This is for those of you that already have an A+ Network Plus Security+ certification, or you need CEUs for other types of things that you are doing. If you have not passed any of these certifications, unfortunately, this won't apply to you. But you could still submit it, I guess. I'll still send you the CEU. You just won't be able to use it. This CEU, this Continuing Education Unit credit, is commonly used for renewals. So if you're renewing your certification and using CEUs to do that, this is what you'll need to listen in for. This will be sometime during the first hour. So just keep listening. I'll give you instructions when we get to that point. It will all be very clear. The current version of the A+ exam, and the only version that is currently available, is the 2201101 and the 2201102. These were released on April the 20th of 2022. And although this says estimated exam retirement, we know now that we have an exact exam retirement. Let's do this in real time, shall we? Because this got changed after I made the slide. It is September, if you spell it right, 25. There you go, 2025. So now we know the exact retirement date. In fact, it's not estimated. We can say it is the exam retirement. There, see? It's hard to type and do a live stream at the same time. There we go. The exam retirement's on September the 25th of 2025. Now we know. So if you are working currently on your A+ certifications, from today, you have just over 6 months to complete this process. That is plenty of time to complete your Core 1 and your Core 2 exams. And we will talk in our after show of different strategies you might want to look at if you will not be able to complete those by September 25th. So there might be some interesting scheduling things that you would like to work on. We'll talk about those in just a bit. Let you know that this exam and any new A+ exams will have exactly the same format. These exams are 90 minutes for each of these exams. On the 1101, or what will eventually be the 1201, you need to earn a 675 on a scale from 100 to 900. And for the Core 2 exam, you have to do a little bit better. You have to earn a 700. Once you pass both of these exams, you are A+ certified for 3 years. So really, once you're certified, it doesn't matter what they do with the exams. In fact, you won't really care what they do with the exams, because I expect that most of you are not going to be taking the exams again once you pass them the first time. So that's an important thing to keep in mind, that even if you take both exams, you pass both exams on September 25th, you finally get the second exam taken and passed, you're now certified for 3 years. That doesn't go away just because they change up the type of questions they're asking. So that's an important thing to keep in mind. You earn that certification, you get to keep it for 3 years. So that part's good. If you are watching this on the live stream, you'll notice that the YouTube video replay will be available immediately afterwards. I also create an audio-only replay, and I usually distribute this. I always distribute this in a podcast format so that it can be automatically downloaded and available on your favorite podcast listening program or app. This is something that if you wanted to find us on your favorite podcast index, we're probably there. If you want to manually add it, you can go to professormesser.com/podcast. And I'll also let you know that if you're on a streaming media service like Spotify, all you have to do is search for Professor Messer, and you'll find all of our podcasts are already there as well. About a day after this live stream, you'll notice that the YouTube video description will have a list of timestamps in it. These timestamps are created by my marketing manager, Lori. Hi, Lori. She's watching this replay, probably watching the chat go by. So if you're someone who enjoys reading through and using those timestamps, where you just click the number and you go directly to what you're looking for, give Lori a shout out in the chat. I know that she appreciates it too. I sure appreciate it, because it helps me and all of you find exactly what you're looking for after the fact. Really speeds things up. Really, really, really fast way to go through these study groups if you're looking to do something like that. Also let you know that when we're not here in these study groups, we have a 24/7 chat that's available on our Discord. Simply visit professormesser.com/Discord. We have thousands and thousands of people who are there studying for their A+, their Network+, their Security+, or even other certifications. It's a great place to go to interact and work with others to earn your certification. I was just there minutes before we started, and someone else had passed their A+ exam and was talking about it. There's a lot of great knowledge in there and a lot of people eager to study. If you're looking for someone to study with, follow that link, professormesser.com/Discord. Also let you know that eventually you will need to take the A+ exam to earn the certification, and unfortunately, you have to pay for that. Eventually, these dollars and cents catch up with you. There are, you could, of course, go to the CompTIA website where you pay full price for the voucher. Not sure why you would do that, because if you're in the US or Canada, I have vouchers for you at a discounted price for any of the CompTIA certification exams. You can find those on my website at professormesser.com/vouchers. And if you purchase that discounted voucher from my site, I give you a little bit more. I give you a free copy of my Exam Hacks ebook. The Exam Hacks ebook is a list of tips and tricks that I've created, sort of life hacks for an exam that can help you study and perhaps help you with some strategies during the exam itself. I would not be surprised if some of these strategies were able to get you a couple of extra points. And sometimes during the exams, those help quite a bit. You can find that at professormesser.com/vouchers. And that is a great place to go to get a discounted voucher, get the Exam Hacks ebook with that. And it's something that can also help you save just a little bit more money when you're ready to take your A+ exam. Let's now go back to that question I asked earlier, which is a corporation orders new PCs with two 16 gigabyte memory modules instead of one 32 gigabyte module. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this configuration? Would it be faster memory bus performance, lower power usage, an increase in available RAM capacity, redundant memory storage, or increased SSD transfer rates? Let's close this poll and see how we did. We did really good this time through. Some of you remember what we talked about last month. Faster memory bus performance came in at 71%. And without giving too much away, I can say you got that one absolutely right. 13% of you said redundant memory storage. 7% said an increase in RAM capacity. 6% said lower power usage. And 2% said increased SSD transfer rates. Well, if you've ever plugged in a memory module into your computer, you know that there are different types of modules. There are different speeds and specifications for those modules. We have to make sure that we get the right module for our motherboard. But even then, there are ways that we could improve the performance. If you have two memory modules and you have a single channel of communication, or just one memory module and a single channel of communication, you can very quickly overwhelm that channel. You can use all of the resources available. There's just not enough bandwidth because so much information is being transferred constantly in your computer between the memory and the CPU. So one way to prevent the CPU from sitting around and waiting for more information to come in is to create an additional bus. So what if you had two separate channels being able to communicate back and forth to that CPU? You can increase the overall performance of the CPU. And that's a great reason, if your motherboard supports it, to be able to have additional throughput that's kind of a bonus if you're using two separate modules instead of a single module. That's what you want to do. This multi-channel memory gives you a faster memory bus performance. And that is something that will, if your motherboard supports it, it's just something that's free. It's just something you can immediately increase the performance of a system by simply using two separate memory modules instead of a single module. So that's absolutely the right answer. 13% said redundant memory storage. We do not generally use redundant memory in our PCs, so that's not something we would use. 7% said an increase in RAM capacity. Well, 216s is the same as 32, so there's no increase by splitting up these memory modules. 6% said a lower power usage. If anything, I think you could argue there's a little bit more power usage, isn't there? Because we have two separate modules, but it's so negligible. It's so tiny, it's really not much of a difference. So that's not a big problem. And then we have 2% that said an increased SSD transfer rates. Nothing we were talking about here had anything to do with SSD. This all had to be about someone communicating directly between memory and CPU. No SSD is involved in this communication, so that would not be the answer either. The one that 71% of you, most of you chose, was faster memory bus performance. You got that one absolutely right. That is the answer we were looking for. Well done with that one. Well, that gives us now a nice warm-up. We were able to get in and answer these questions. Now I can see that you're able to answer and interact online. Everything is working as expected. So now let's do a new question. And as many of you know, on our live study groups, the first new question of the month is a performance-based question. That is what we are going to do. So a performance-based question is one that is simply not multiple choice. So for example, the one you have in front of you is a multiple choice question. There was a question and then multiple options to choose from. But a performance-based question is effectively anything but multiple choice. So it could be fill in the blank. It could pop to you at a command prompt and you'd have to do information there. Maybe you're at a Windows screen and you have to click around the screen and do different tasks. Maybe it's a fill in the blank. Maybe it's a pull down menu. Maybe you have to drag and drop. There's a lot going on there. So this is a performance-based question we have today. And the performance-based question today is a matching question. I have for you, and this one I made a little bit easier than we normally do with matching questions. This matching question asks, match the printer to the best description. So I have for you, you love a printer question, right? I have for you 5 different printers, and then I have for you 5 different descriptions. And you'll notice they're not lined up. Now, normally I will do 6 or 7 descriptions to make it a little bit harder. I did not do that today. So I'm giving you a slight break on this study group, but not too much because after all, it is printers. We have for us the 5 printers, which are inkjet, thermal, laser, 3D, and impact. And the 5 different descriptions are: strands of filament are heated and layered. The second one is an ink ribbon is used to create the output. Description C is treated paper is used to produce the printout. The fourth is drops of pigment are placed on a page to create the printout. And then the last one is heat and pressure are used to create the printed page. So now I want you to match up for me the capabilities of these printers with the type of printer that it happens to be. And in this case, it's a 1-to-1. So you're either getting them all right or you're missing 2 of them at a minimum when that happens. So sometimes I will put the extras in there. On the exams, they tend to do that. You'll notice that the answers go to the link that you see on your screen, professormesser.com/QA. That's the one you can always use to answer questions for our live streams. If you're watching this on the replay, obviously that link will not be available to you, or at least it'll be available, but not much will be going on when you go to professormesser.com/QA. So this will be a good test to see if we really understand an overview of the different printers we need to know. So go through this list and see if it's something that maybe you know it, maybe you don't. Even if you don't know it, take a guess. Slide these into the right place. This is sort of a drag and drop. I guess we could have even done it as a pull down question to make that happen. If you think you know the answer, please know answers in the chat room. Use the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA to answer your question. This is one where printers are such an important part of this exam that it's going to be important that you not only understand how they work, but you also have to understand how to maintain them. So a little bit of a two-pronged problem. And in fact, in that section on printers, we go through this process of understanding the internals and how these printers work. And then we also have to understand what can break on these printers. This is something that can be complicated if you've never worked with these printers before. And some of these printer types we simply don't have in our homes. So if you haven't worked in an office environment, and in fact, some of these printer types you might not even find in your normal office environment. So this does take a little bit of study to understand a little bit more of what you would expect here. Let's see how you did with this particular question. Let's go through each one of these and see if we can figure out what the answers might be. We'll start with the very first one, which is an inkjet printer. And for inkjet, you need to slide up in this list answer D, where you are dropping pigments of ink onto the page, and all of those little drops of ink are all put together to create the final printout. Inkjet printers are remarkable not only in their technology that they're using, but they're going so fast, I'm not even sure how it is able to do this. It really produces an amazing output. Beautiful color output. Pictures are super nice on an inkjet printer. So this is a technology that's very common in our homes. It's also very common in our workplaces. And you do need to know about inkjet printers because you will certainly be troubleshooting one of these. Next on our list, number 2 on our list, is a thermal printer. Thermal printer, as the name implies, must have something associated with heat. It's got to be in there somewhere. And of course, in this case, answer C is what we were looking for. The heat that comes from a thermal printer interacts with a chemical that is on the paper that you're using. Thermal printer just can't use any kind of paper. It has to be a specially made thermal printer paper because it changes color when heat is subjected to that page. So you have a heated print head in a thermal printer that heats up part of the paper as it's going by, and that's what it creates. So those in the chat room saying, oh, like a receipt, exactly like a receipt. That is a thermal printer inside of the point of sale terminal, and the piece of paper that they give you that's slick on one side, that is thermal paper. That's exactly how it works. Don't get that anywhere near a flame or a heat source or leave it on your dashboard of your car because the entire receipt will turn black because it's thermal paper. Third on our list is laser beams. So laser printers, remarkable technologies in themselves, complex technology, some of the most complex printers to work on. Laser printers would be best identified here as answer E. Heat and pressure are used to create the printed page. This is a little bit different than thermal. Thermal doesn't need the pressure part, but ink is not used in a laser printer. Toner is used in a laser printer. And toner are these very small balls of little tiny little circular spheres of pigment. And that pigment is permanently affixed to a page by melting it. It melts to the page, and then it is pressed hard into that page with what's called a fuser in our laser printer. And that is what permanently affixes all of that toner to the printed page. So if you're working with a laser printer, you'll notice when the paper comes out of the laser printer, it's toasty warm. It's so nice and warm. That's because we had to use heat and pressure to permanently fix those to the page. Fourth on our list is the 3D printer. 3D printer. The 3D printer uses strands of filament that are heated and melted and then dripped using a nozzle onto a very specific part of that output. And then you move up a layer and you do another layer of output. Then you move up another layer. It's like using molten lava to create a 3D object from this printer. 3D printer is not very common in an enterprise, but certain organizations do use 3D printers and rely on 3D printers, and you may indeed find yourself working on these. There are other types of 3D printers that use resin to create this. They use resin and commonly an infrared type of light or sometimes a laser to create that. So there's different types of 3D printers. We do talk about this in our 3D printer video. So if you're interested in those two types, we give you more details on that. And then lastly is the impact printer. Impact printer, not describing the beautiful output that it gives you such an impact. No, it's describing the printer process itself, where it is taking little pins. Usually a dot matrix printer is a good example of an impact printer, but there's other types of printers as well that are impact. For example, you might have chain printers that are used in very large mainframe environments that print very high speeds. But usually what you're finding for an impact printer is a dot matrix printer. Dot matrix printers use an ink ribbon. Little pins in the print head are pushing through the ink ribbon to leave a mark on the page and create the final output. And if you've ever heard one, they're super loud, at least relatively speaking to these other printer types. And it's something that you really notice when somebody's printing on the dot matrix printer. It's very clear that somebody's using that printer right now. You simply can't hide it. Back in the day when this was one of the most common printers we used, you actually would put it inside of a cabinet or a case that was designed for the printer in a workspace so it would be a little quieter. Otherwise, it would be quite a problem to be able to work through that. Ink ribbon used to create the output is an impact printer. That is the answer we were looking for. So to summarize those, an inkjet printer drops a pigment or placed on a page to create the output. A thermal printer uses treated paper to produce the printout. A laser printer uses heat and pressure to create that printed page. A 3D printer uses strands of filament that are heated and layered. And then an impact printer has an ink ribbon that is used as the method to put a mark on the page itself. Hopefully you got some of those right. I didn't go through the details of these because this was a fill-in-the-blank question. It's difficult to compile those together. But hopefully you got a little bit more familiarity with what printers are, what types of printers are out there, and what some of the most identifying characteristics of those printers might be. Hopefully that's given you an idea of just a little bit that's going to be important for understanding how these printers work. So hopefully that is our performance-based question today. Hopefully you did well with that one. Let's now shift gears back to a question that is a multiple choice question. Our next question is this one that asks, a company has started a new project for VDI. Which of the following would be most associated with this project? Would it be, if I can push the right buttons today, there we go. It's been a while since we've done a live stream, isn't it? A couple of weeks go by. The questions, possible answers are, is a new project for VDI. Is this an encrypted network tunnel between locations? Is this campus-wide wireless coverage? Is it secure printing using access badges? Is it a centralized desktop management in the cloud? Or is it redundant drive arrays using SAS? We have quite a bit to go through here. The question again asks, A company has started a new project for VDI. Which of the following would be most associated with this project? Is it encrypted network tunnels between locations, campus-wide wireless coverage, secure printing using access badges, centralized desktop management in the cloud, or redundant drive arrays using SAS? If you think you know the answer, follow the link that's on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA. Please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to use the possible answers on your screen to be able to answer this one. Hopefully you're familiar with some of these acronyms and some of these technologies, because nothing is a gimme on these exams. It's very common for them, for at least from the perspective of someone taking these exams, it's very common for them to use a lot of acronyms, not only in the question, but use acronyms in the answers with the expectation that you already know what those acronyms mean. So that's another one of those things that we really, really have to know about. So go through this list. A lot of you answering this one really quick, which usually means we either know it really well or we're answering just randomly because we aren't really sure of the answer. We're going to find out here in a moment. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, a company has started a new project for VDI. Which of the following would be most associated with this project? Is it an encrypted network tunnel between locations, campus-wide wireless coverage, secure printing using access badges, centralized desktop management in the cloud, or redundant drive arrays using SAS? And you can see that 78% of you, that's a pretty strong showing, say that this is centralized desktop management in the cloud. But double digits here, 14% of you say this is encrypted network tunnels between locations. And then we have effectively a three-way tie for third place. 3% of you say redundant drive arrays using serial attached SCSI. That's what SAS is. 2% of you say secure printing using access badges. And then 2% of you say campus-wide wireless coverage. Well, whenever you see the term VDI, you should naturally be thinking desktop as a service. Everything is as a service these days. This is the desktop as a service. Imagine instead of your desktop being on a computer that is in front of you, that is at your desk, that is a PC with a keyboard, a mouse, a screen, maybe an external storage. Maybe you've got additional storage in your computer. There's plenty of memory because it's running an operating system. Your Windows operating system is on that computer. That means that if anything happens to that machine that requires a human interaction or intervention, someone has to visit that physical device. But what if there wasn't a physical device? What if you didn't have a full-blown computer with a full operating system with all of the memory and all of the storage and all of the files? What if everything was in the cloud? Well, it is possible to put an entire computer in the cloud using virtual desktop infrastructure, or VDI. If it's usually in your environment, your local network, we often refer to it as VDI. If we're doing this VDI function in the cloud, you often see it referred to as desktop as a service, or DAAS. Obviously, locally, you will need a system that can at least get the basics of video going so that you can connect to the network. You'll need a keyboard and a mouse, but that's kind of all you need, a local machine. You don't need to purchase a full-blown computer, and you could save a little money this way by having all of the desktop functionality in the cloud itself. So hopefully that will give you some familiarity with what you may want to look for. This really helps quite a bit. The real important part is having a good network connection, because now you're effectively doing a screen sharing function, a remote desktop, if you will, to that cloud-based infrastructure. Looks a little bit like this. I'm running, here it is. I started up the Amazon Workspaces function, and I just said, start up Workspaces. I connect to it, and this is what I get. So from my desktop, this now looks like a normal Windows environment. I can click on the browser that's here. I can install new applications. This is my background. This is my own desktop because I logged in with my username and password. This is a very common way to operate. So if you're somebody who is wanting to take that administration, move it off of the desk and put it into the cloud, you might want to use VDI, the virtual desktop infrastructure. And indeed, 78% of you said, yep, we're centralizing desktop management and putting that in the cloud. 14% said encrypted network tunnels between locations. You were probably thinking of a VPN or an IPsec tunnel, something of that sort. VDI is not a VPN. Those are obviously different technologies, so it would not be an encrypted network tunnel between locations. We have 3% that said redundant drive arrays using a serial attached storage device. Redundant drive arrays are not something that's commonly associated with the VDI, doesn't describe VDI. You don't need redundant drive arrays to be able to use VDI, so that is not the right answer either. 2% said secure printing using access badges. That is a common method we use today so that you send a printout to the printer, and if it is especially sensitive information, you don't want that printing and then sitting in the outbox and somebody else can come along and find that. Instead, you use a secure printing method where you go to the printer physically, you badge into the printer, and then it prints your print job while you're standing there, just to ensure there's a little more security, which of course has nothing to do with VDI. And then campus-wide wireless coverage, always a great idea. Have plenty of wireless technology, plenty of wireless connectivity, but that has nothing to do with VDI either. That's more about your wireless 802.11 infrastructure. In this case, the answer we were looking for, and the one that most of you answered, was centralized desktop management in the cloud. Let's do another multiple choice question. We're going to keep going since we are in Core 1. We're going to do questions regarding troubleshooting of those systems. And this next question is indeed a bit of a troubleshooting question. It says, during startup, a computer prompts to set the date and time. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this prompt? Would it be that the power supply is faulty, GPS shows the computer in a new location, it is required after a power source is removed, an operating system update has just finished, or a motherboard battery is depleted? It's got to be one of those. So in this particular case, you can answer by visiting the link down here, professormesser.com/QA. That's the link we use for all of our questions. This question again asks, during startup, a computer prompts to set the date and time. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this prompt? The power supply is faulty. GPS shows the computer in a new location. It is required after the power source is removed. An operating system update has just finished, or the motherboard battery is depleted. If you think you know the answer, go to professormesser.com/QA. As always, no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. You want to answer there. Those in the chat room that are saying you're getting buffering or you're getting freezing or something of that sort, you may want to change the resolution that you're using to watch this on. You can click the cog wheel at the bottom of your video screen, and you are able to adjust that to perhaps a lower resolution that might work better for the bandwidth that you have available. And I will absolutely, I'm looking at my cache here, and I'm sending everything to YouTube without a problem. So in this particular case, that is not something on my side. That's got to be something probably on the YouTube side. And it might help you to set the resolution a little bit lower. That might help with whatever they are doing with their back-end processes to get it over to you. Might be useful. See which one works the best. You can maybe try different resolutions as well. Figure out what makes the most sense for your particular connection. Let's see how you did with this one. The question asks, during startup, a computer prompts to set the date and time. Which of the following would be the most likely reason for this prompt? Is it the power supply is faulty? GPS shows the computer in a new location. It's required after the power source is removed. An operating system has just finished. Operating system update has just finished. Or the motherboard battery is depleted. Let's see how you did with this one. We'll close our poll, and we can see that 80% of you, not really fooling many people today on these questions, say the motherboard battery is depleted. We then have a tie for second place with 7%, which is an operating system update has just finished and GPS shows the computer in a new location. And then 4% say it is required after the power source is removed, and 2% say the power supply is faulty. This is something, if you start up your computer and you are instantly asked before anything even begins, you're immediately asked, what's the date and what's the time? This is usually because there is a battery on the motherboard that maintains the date and time for the entire system. And if that battery is no longer working, then your motherboard has no idea what date and time it is, and you have to provide it with the date and time that it will remember as long as you provide power to that system. And then if you remove the power and that battery is indeed not functioning, you'll have to go through the entire process again. That is something that might be a little bit of a problem. So simply replacing that battery works great. Replace the battery, put a new one in, and now your BIOS will know exactly what the date and time is, even if you remove the power source from the back of your computer. This is something that that you used to do to reset the configuration of a computer. We no longer keep our configurations in non-volatile RAM on these motherboards. Almost every motherboard you'll find these days, I would imagine 100% of them have flash memory on the motherboard, and that's where the configuration is stored. You cannot remove the configuration of a BIOS or remove any passwords from your BIOS by simply removing the battery. There's a different process now to clear out that configuration, and you'll need to look at the specifications for your motherboard to know exactly which one you should use. So that is the answer we were looking for. It must be that the motherboard battery is depleted, and that's why we are being asked for a time and date prompt when we start up. Now, 4% of you said this is required after the power source is removed. Well, if your battery was working, you would still not be asked for a date and time. Even if you remove the power source, this would be the connection to your power outlet in the wall. You're unplugging the power cable from the back of your computer. Then you're plugging it back in, and now you have to give it date and time again. That would not ask you for the date and time. If you unplugged the power cord, plugged it back in, started your computer up, and the battery was working, you would still never be asked about this. So that would not be the best or most likely reason for this particular prompt. 2% of you said the power supply is faulty. If that's the case, it probably wouldn't be starting at all, so that's not the issue. GPS shows the computer in a new location. There are some BIOS configurations and BIOS options available on certain systems that can track your system using GPS, but most BIOS will not provide any type of tracking using GPS. So that's not something we would use. That's not the reason you're getting the prompt. 4% say it's required after the power source is removed. We talked about that. 7% said an operating system update has just finished. Thankfully, you don't have to reset your time and date every time there's an operating system update. The answer here, and most of you realize this, is that the motherboard battery is depleted. 80% of you answered that one, and 80% of you got that one absolutely correct. Well, as you can tell, there is a lot of information you need to know for this exam. Everything relating to hardware on your system, printers, networking. Just for the core 1, we have to know about cloud computing. We have to troubleshoot. And then for core 2, there's hardware, there's security, there's more troubleshooting, and a lot more you have to know. So quite a bit. In our entire course, it is 137 videos. And as much as I would like you to be able to watch all of those videos, and I really think you should, not everybody has time for every single one of those videos. I recognize that. So one of the things I want to do was still make this information available to you. So what I created was a set of course notes. These course notes provide you with information, all of the information that we have in our videos. In fact, here's a copy of the course notes right here. This is the digital version, the PDF version. So if you've gone through my videos, you know that each one of these, this is a step-by-step, video-by-video breakdown of everything you need to know from these videos. All of the important text, all of the important graphics, all of the important charts, they're in here. So if you're someone who is trying to study for your exam and you just want to have everything in one place, maybe you're not a great note taker. I also have physical versions of this. The physical version of the course notes is exactly the same as the digital version, but it's something you can carry along with you as a printed book. So if you purchase the physical edition, I do ship this to you wherever you are in the world. There is the digital version comes with this for no additional charge. So while you're waiting on that delivery, you get the physical edition coming in the mail. You can download the digital edition right away with no delays. So you might want to look into that. We've got plenty to see on our site. We have course notes, practice exams, and much more. If you'd like to have a look at those, simply visit our website. Go to professormesser.com/1101notes, and you'll be able to not only see our notes, of course, you could always choose the options at the top of the screen to find those as well. This might help you save a little bit of time with your studies. Hopefully it'll give you the information you need all in one place, make the process just a little more streamlined. Thank you for those of you that already have these notes. Thank you so much for the support for those as well. Let's do another question, shall we? I've got another one for you that we have ready to go. This question asks, what type of security is commonly associated with the Bluetooth pairing process? Let's see what the answer happens to be. In this case, we have a number of options available. Is the option an SMS code, facial recognition, third-party verification, a PIN, or a device certificate? Got a few options there. What type of security is commonly associated with the Bluetooth pairing process? Is it SMS code, face recognition, third-party verification, PIN, or device certificate? All of these are useful security functions. We have to know what the answer is. If you think you know the answer, please no answers in the chat room. Instead, you want to follow the link on your screen. Go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can answer that question right there. We've got plenty to go through here. Let's see if you know the answers and what these might have associated with them. If you've ever gone through the Bluetooth pairing process, this might be one where you're very familiar with what it happens to be. See if this is something that you know by inputting your answer. Go to professormesser.com/QA. And as always, please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to be sure we know what all of these different options might be. And of course, we don't have the chat room there when we're taking the actual exam. We'll have to see what that happens to be. Oh, I wish we could do that, though. We need more help during the exam itself. Nope, no earpieces during the exam, no telephones, no access with other people in the room. We have to make sure that we know the answer to those. And that's something that that can be a challenge. If you've never been to one of these industry certification exams before, it's just you. There's nothing you can do at that point. There is no Google available. You must know everything in your brain and be able to get it out there. So see if you know what this one happens to be. A lot of you have answered this one, so let's see if you know the answer. What type of security is commonly associated with the Bluetooth pairing process? Is it SMS code, face recognition, third-party verification, a PIN, or a device certificate? Let's click the end button and see what you chose. 80% of you say the answer is PIN. Well, those 16% of you say it's a device certificate that we would use. We have 3% that say third-party verification, 1% say an SMS code is what we would use, and then 0% of you say the answer is face recognition. Bluetooth, you would think you do something. It's right there. You have a device in front of you, but it's not facial recognition at all. Only 0% of you chose face recognition. Nobody was interested in that one. The Bluetooth pairing process starts by putting the Bluetooth process into a discovery mode so that both sides, or at least one of those sides, is able to discover the other one. We also have this discovery mode to be able to find that device that is in the discovery mode, and then it asks you if the personal identification number, the PIN, is correct so that you know you are pairing with the correct device. If there's no obvious PIN on that device, make sure you check the documentation for that device. It may be one that is the same PIN number every time, and it may tell you or have it on the device somewhere as to what you would expect for the PIN. That's an important value to know about. So make sure you are familiar with that personal identification number. And then once you do that, the systems are connected. You never have to go through this process again. Thankfully, ideally, hopefully, that is one that can be a bit of a challenge, because next time you connect to it, you just want to connect. You've already gone through this pairing process. So normally you never have to go through that process ever again. Should be useful to know. And that's why 80% of you said, yes, personal identification number is what you would use here. That's the option that gives us the most connectivity. It confirms and secures that connection, that you're connecting to the right device, and that you're not just connecting to some random device that might be out there. 16% said a device certificate, and we use device certificates all the time to be able to make sure that we are able to confirm that a device really is managed by a particular organization. Very common to use on laptops, for example, and on mobile devices. But Bluetooth does not use a device certificate. That's a little too complex and really sort of necessary when you're working through it. So make sure you're familiar with those different options. We obviously aren't using third-party verification for this or an SMS code, but face recognition, as we've already seen, nobody's using either. That's the one that is really a bit more of a challenge, especially if you are working with Bluetooth devices. Fortunately, once you set up the pair the first time, you generally do not have to do it again. Let's now shift gears into more of a networking question. This question is one dealing with DHCP. The question asks, a device has just received a DHCP address with a 24-hour lease. When will this device contact the DHCP server again to renew the lease? Would it be, here we go, every hour, 12 hours after the lease, at the end of the 24-hour lease, not until the device has restarted, or after 4 hours, and then every hour afterwards? We got a little bit to go from there. A device has just received a DHCP address with a 24-hour lease. When will this device contact the DHCP server again to renew the lease? Is it every hour, 12 hours after lease, at the end of the 24-hour lease, not until the device is restarted, or after 4 hours, and then every hour afterwards? See, if you know the answer, follow the link on your screen, go to professormesser.com/QA, and you can fill in that particular connection. For those of you in the chat room, I see if folks are saying, I'm getting some lag, I'm getting some drops. We have a monitor here that monitors our connection to YouTube. We have a perfect connection today. We have no drops whatsoever. All of the video that we are sending to YouTube is getting to them with no problem at all. So what happens, though, is once I send the video to YouTube, they reprocess it and they send it to you. So what you're seeing comes out about 10 seconds after I say it. But that means that a connection between YouTube and you is what tends to cause any type of lags in that scenario. So it's very possible that your particular geography or your particular connectivity to YouTube is the one that is being affected. I would expect that around the world, not everybody is seeing that same connectivity. So make sure you have a look at that. You may just want to refresh the page or try a different resolution that might help as well. That's something that is basically out of my hands. That's up to YouTube to be able to provide you with that fully non-latency video streaming functionality. So that's exactly what we would work through on that. Let's see how you did with this question. The question asks, a device has just received a DHCP address with a 24-hour lease. When will this device contact the DHCP server again to renew the lease? So this would be obviously the first time we reconnect with that DHCP server. Is that every hour, 12 hours after the lease, at the end of the 24-hour lease time, not until the device has restarted, or after 4 hours, then each hour afterwards? So what would this answer be? Not difficult math in this scenario. Let's see what you chose for the answers. We're a little bit torn. 56% of us say at the end of the 24-hour lease. So that is the majority of the answer. 29%, which is also a pretty big number, almost a third of you say 12 hours after the lease. And then everything drops to one-digit answers after that. 7% of you say not until the device is restarted. 5% say after 4 hours and then every hour afterwards. And 2% say every hour. This is an important process because when you're troubleshooting DHCP, you need to know when did this device first get its address, and then you need to know how long the lease is so that you can then calculate how often will this device be checking in to be able to renew that particular lease. That is something that is an important consideration. With DHCP, if you were to look at the DHCP specifications, the RFC, the request for comments that is associated with DHCP. And by the way, we use that term request for comments because when we first introduce a standard, there's a time frame where people can comment on that standard to give people the ability to provide their own input so that the standard can be modified if anything is a glaring issue or something that needs to be addressed. we keep that same RFC name even after we decided that it's ratified, that this is now a standard. We finished our edits. We finished with the comments process. It's now an official standard. It's now an RFC that has a real RFC number, but we still call it request for comments, which is kind of weird. In the RFC, there's something called a T1 timer. This T1 timer checks in with the DHCP server to renew the IP address. And this happens at 50% of the lease time. That is the default on practically any DHCP configuration you'll find. You could, of course, modify that T1 configuration in your DHCP server. Hardly anyone ever does. So this means that if you have a 24-hour lease time, you are going to check back in with this DHCP server after 50% of that lease time. Now, there's also a problem. What if that DHCP server is no longer available? What if it's down? What if it's not working? What if it's not responding to you? So when you run into that situation, then you should probably look at the T2 timer, which is usually one that checks in again with any available DHCP server. The T2 timer is 7/8 of the lease time, or if we're doing the math, 87.5% of the lease time. So in a 24-hour time frame, the question that we were asking is, when does it first check in with the DHCP server to renew that particular lease? It doesn't wait for the entire 24 hours to go by. It waits for 50% of that time frame, which means the answer is the one that 29% of you chose, which is 12 hours after lease. That is the answer that we wanted. Even though 56%, a majority of you answered at the end of the 24-hour lease, we don't wait to the end of the lease. It's not like the lease that's on your apartment or the lease that you have for a car. You don't wait until the very end to do something with it. You actually wait halfway through. Not something we do with your apartment. You wouldn't talk to the landlord and say, hey, I know we're only 50% in. Let's renew for another year. It's not something we commonly do. We usually wait till the end. But for DHCP, we handle leases a little bit differently. So make sure you're familiar with the leasing process, because you will need to troubleshoot that and be familiar with that, usually in a very common day-to-day process, to be able to work through that. Now, if you are watching this video for continuing education unit credit, I would like to send you an email that certifies that you were here for a 1-hour webinar category presentation. It's a webinar category CEU. The way that you would earn that CEU is you go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website. You click the Contact Us link. In that Contact Us link, it will ask you for your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put March 2025 Core 1 or something close to that, so I know which one this came from. And in the body of the message, on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, 12 hours after lease. Those are our super secret code words of this month. 12 hours after lease. If that's all you wanted was to get that CEU, you can click the submit button and send it to me. I do appreciate it if you put even a little bit more information in there. Tell me about why you're taking this certification exam, the process you're going through. I can't necessarily respond to all of those because I get a lot of these messages coming in, but I do like to see and read through what you're doing with this process, which does help me a bit when I'm building new training materials, when I'm doing new live streams, just so I understand what that's associated with. This CEU will be emailed to you usually in about a week. Please be patient with me. Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, and that is a continuing education unit that you can apply towards a renewal of your certification. If you don't have a certification currently, you can't submit these yet anyway, so you don't have to worry about that and work through it. So hopefully that's something that you are now sending in. The process again, go to the top or the bottom of the Professor Messer website, click the Contact Us link, click when it brings up the form, put in your name, your email address. In the subject line, please put March 2025 Core 1. And in the body of the message on a line by itself, put the super secret code words of the month, 12 hours after lease. Then you can submit that and then wait for me to get my act together so that I can then send you the CEU information that you were indeed here for 1 hour of this webinar. We've got time for more questions, so let's do another one on this list. Our next question is a RAID question. The question asks, a technician is installing a RAID 1 array, and the customer requires 10 terabytes of available space for their documents. How much physical drive storage is needed to create this array? Is the answer 100 terabytes, 20 terabytes, 5 terabytes, 40 terabytes, or 10 terabytes? It's got to be one of these. A technician is installing a RAID 1 array, and the customer requires 10 terabytes of available space for their documents. How much physical drive storage is needed to create this array? Is it 100 terabytes, 20 terabytes, 5 terabytes, 40 terabytes, or 10 terabytes? If you think you know the answer, submit your answer by visiting professormesser.com/QA. As always, please, no answers in the chat room. Please, no hints in the chat room. You want to go to the link that is on your screen at professormesser.com/QA to submit your answer. See what you think you know the answer happens to be. Maybe some of you have put together some RAID arrays before. You might already be familiar with this process. This might be a gimme for you. If you've never played around with RAID, this might be something you might want to try, especially since we are working through this particular part of the exam objectives. It's absolutely on that list of objectives. Make sure you are familiar with what these might be. This might be something good for you to work through. And it's a different answer for this question if it's a different RAID type. So that can be a little bit more of a challenge too. Hopefully you're familiar with RAID. If you're not, make sure you have a look at those on the exam itself. A number of you have answered this one, so let's see how you did. The question again asks, a technician is installing a RAID 1 array, and the customer requires 10 terabytes of available space for their documents. How much physical drive storage is needed to create this array? Is it 100 terabytes, 20 terabytes, 5 terabytes, 40 terabytes, or 10 terabytes? Let's close our poll and see what you think the answer is. We can see that 75% of you say the answer is 20 terabytes, 10% say it's 10 terabytes, 8% say it's 40, and then we drop down to 44% say 5, and 3% say 100. So to be able to answer this question, we need to understand RAID 1, because we are creating indeed a RAID 1 array. So now you have to, in your mind, go back to the RAID 1 configuration, and you should know that RAID 1 is also known as mirroring. Mirroring. We are mirroring. We have a mirror of one set physical drive. We have a duplicate of all of that data that is also on another physical drive. So you need at least 2 drives to be able to operate a RAID 1 array. You could, of course, have mini drives. You could have 4 drives. You could have 6 drives. You could have 8 drives. Anything divisible by 2 effectively would make a very good RAID 1 array. These are mirrored, which means everything is duplicated between these 2 physical drives. This is the beauty of RAID 1, is that it is an exact duplicate. And if for some reason we lose one of these drives, the drive fails, the drive has some type of power issue, the drive suddenly becomes inoperable. In some cases, these are spinning hard drives, so the spinning hard drive fails. If we lose a drive, we're still up and running because we have an exact duplicate of the data on the other drive. I have indeed walked into organizations, and on their server, I'm seeing flashing lights and information on the server, and they're telling me on the error console is telling me the drive has failed. And I look at the error message, and it's from 6 months ago. Their drive failed 6 months ago on their RAID 1 array. Nobody called me. Nobody said anything. It wasn't being actively monitored. Not necessarily my responsibility in that case, but something we should have done. And in this case, they had no idea. They were still running. Everything was working fine because the other drive was still operating as it should. So that was my opportunity to remove the bad drive, put a new drive in, and have it resynchronize between both of those so that all of the data would be duplicated again between both of those drives. That's an important thing to think about. So that is why if you are installing RAID 1, you need enough to duplicate everything on both drives. You effectively need twice as much drive space as the total amount of storage for the array. So if you have in this particular case, for example, if you have you need 10 terabytes of available space, you need to double that number because it's RAID 1. So instead of buying 10 terabytes of storage, you need to buy 20 terabytes of storage, put it into the array, and the final amount of available space that will be available is half that, or 10 terabytes. So that is why we need that. This is an important part of RAID 1, that it is an exact mirror of these. It is an exact duplicate. So you need to make sure that that's the case. There's not more than one duplicate with RAID 1. It's just one duplicate from there. This is a very simplified version, but if there were 4 drives in this RAID 1 array, 2 of the drives would have our actual data, and the other 2 drives would be the duplicate of that data. So there's only one copy of that data here, which is, of course, why we always tell you, make sure you're using the right type of array for the type of drive system that you're using. Make sure that you have the right amount of storage space available. If you lose one of the drives, you're still up and running with RAID 1, which is good. But as always, of course, remember, RAID is not backup. So just because you have a RAID array doesn't mean you get out of performing backups. You still have to perform backups. That's an important consideration as well. We weren't talking about backups in this question, but just another thing that's important to keep in mind. 20 terabytes is what we needed for this array, and indeed 75% of you chose that option. That is the right answer. That is the one we were looking for, and that's the one that gives you the right amount of storage that matches now 10 terabytes once you have that. 10% of you said 10 terabytes. If you had 10 terabytes of physical drive storage and you put it in a RAID 1 array, you would only have 5 terabytes of actual storage space. So that's not going to help you very much. So it's not 10 terabytes. 8% of you said 40 terabytes. Well, if you had 40 terabytes and you put it into a RAID 1 array, half of that space is available for your data, which means you'd have 20 terabytes available. So this is one that I guess technically could be a correct answer because that would give you 10 terabytes, but I think you know that wasn't the answer we were looking for. So 8% of you had more than enough. You had 20 terabytes available. That wasn't the question. We needed 10 once we created the array. We have 4% that said 5 terabytes, and because it's RAID 1, that would give you 2.5, nowhere close to the 10 that you needed. And if you had 100 terabytes, I have an array here in my studio where I think I'm running RAID 5, and I think the total amount of storage I have is, I think the total amount I put in there is like 98 terabytes of drive space in there. And so I've now got 70 something available with a RAID 5. If you put 100 terabytes in a RAID 1, you're using half of that for the copy of the data. So your available space after installing that is 50 terabytes of drive space. It's remarkable how much space we have on these drives these days. A big part of this very large amount of data storage that we've created in data storage technologies is what has led us to the big data searches, and effectively the AI that we have today is based on this large amount of data, being able to search through large amounts of data, being able to store all of this data and have it immediately available. Pretty interesting stuff. So make sure you are familiar with RAID and the different RAID types, because you may have to answer a question about RAID on the exam itself. And hopefully, because you were familiar with RAID 1, you knew all you had to do was split that particular array in 2, that number in 2, and you've got exactly what you would use for that. I know we're at the top of the hour, but let's do one more question. We've got another one here, and I'll remind you, of course, in the second hour is our after show where I take your questions. If you would like to submit a question, you could do it at any time by using that same link we've been using today, professormesser.com/QA. I want to give you a question, but I want to give you one that's from one of my practice exams books. If you haven't seen these practice exams books, let me give you some background as to why these books even exist. Here's a copy of the physical version that's in front of me. Like all of our books, you can get them in a PDF or you can get them in a physical version. One of the things I found was that the books that I had I found either online or websites I found online with Q&A were giving me odd questions that had nothing to do with the exam objectives, or the answers were not giving me answers that were accurate. And this drives me crazy when I'm trying to study for a certification exam. One of the things that I always work through whenever I'm looking at these certification exams is getting the best quality and the best experience that will prepare me for the actual exam. So one of the things that I like to do is go to these practice exams and write my own that have the same style, the same feel, the same type of cadence and tone as the actual exam. And I think that gives us the best preparation. That way, when you take these questions, you'll be very familiar with the cadence and style of questions on the actual exam, even though the questions in my book are all original questions. These are not actual exam questions, obviously. That would be unethical. We would not want to use that. So make sure you're familiar with that particular part of it. These are original questions written in the style of the actual exam. So let's do one. I have this available on my screen. I guess I should bring it up on my screen. Here's the question. This is coming from my book. This is the question that says, it's question A62. It's on page 21 of my practice exam. This is the one that's in question, our practice exam A. The question asks, a manager in the marketing department is printing many copies of a 20-page document. The manager would like to print all 20 pages of the document before the next copy begins printing. What settings should the manager configure in the output settings? Is it duplex, collate, quality, or orientation? These are all the things we should work through. So hopefully you are familiar with these options that you can choose when you're printing something out. You get to that dialog box when you're ready to print. There's all kinds of things available there. Which one of these things would we be using? So this is one of those options. Now, in this case, I don't have this in our Q&A that you would use, but please no answers in the chat room. Please no hints in the chat room. We want to choose from any of these. Now, because this is a PDF, I could turn on my annotation functions and I can start making notes on here. If this is on my tablet and I have a stylus, I can write information onto the screen. If I think I know the answers, I can select the answer or deselect the answer if I would like to. You got different options here that you can choose. Now, the answer to this, if you just wanted to know if it's A, B, C, or D, I have a quick answer page, which is on page 31. But if you wanted more of a detailed overview, and this is the one I recommend, that detailed overview page is page 99 for this particular question. Now, we're on page 21, but instead of you scrolling through a PDF, nobody wants to do that. I created additional hot links right here where it says quick answer and where it says the details. If you want to go to page 31, you click quick answer. If you want to go to page 99, you click the details. So let's click page 99. We'll click the details, click, and it takes us all the way to page 99. So I didn't have to scroll. And then it goes through the question again, gives you the 4 answers: duplex, collate, quality, or orientation. And then you have options here. It tells you the answer is B, collate. And it tells you why that is the right answer. Now, one of the things that always drives me crazy on practice exams I see online or from other third parties is they don't tell you why the wrong answer is wrong. And that is something that not only frustrates me because I'm constantly getting wrong answers and it doesn't tell me why the answer is wrong, but I think it's an opportunity to learn from your mistake. That's really the only time you do learn, after all, is when you do something wrong, when you make a mistake, when you have to fix something. That's where all the learning happens. So here's our opportunity to learn. When you get it wrong, I take every incorrect answer and I document why it is incorrect. And so even if you get the question right, I even recommend that you quickly read through the incorrect answers just to validate in your mind that you really picked the right answer for the right reasons. Plus, on your actual exam, you might get a question about duplex. You might get a question about quality. You might get a question about orientation. Even though they're the wrong answers on my exam, it might be the right answer on your exam. So make sure you use those. So every question is effectively 4 different topics that you can learn about. So I think that's a valuable part of these Q&A as well. Now, if you read through this question and you simply don't understand the words that I'm using, you don't understand the references that are in this question, I have a link that will take you directly to the video where this question originated from. So this question came from our 2201101 Objective 3.6 on multifunction devices, and you can go there and watch the video and then come back to this question to be able to answer it, perhaps with a little more knowledge of the original topic. Now, once we're done with this, we can go back to where we started by using our back button. Most PDF readers have a back button. Not all of them do, but many of them do. And I can use the back button, click, and I'm back to where I started. And I can simply go to the next question that's on the list. This is my practice exams book. I have these available for the Core 1, for the Core 2. I have physical versions. I have digital versions. You pick the one that's best for you. If you buy the Core 1 and Core 2 at the same time, there's a little bit of a cost break. So we give you a little bit of a discount, which I think is kind of nice when you're buying more than one of these. These have both performance-based questions and multiple choice questions in it. So you've got a lot that you could go through here. You've got a lot of questions in here. You got a lot of information to go through. This might be able to help you. If you want to look into more of this, see if it's right for you, check it out on our website. Go to professormesser.com/core1pe. That's for our Core 1 practice exams, and see if this is something that might help you with your studies. One of the best things to do just after you've finished all your studies, before you schedule your exam, go through some practice tests. See how well you're able to answer some of these questions and see if you're really ready to take this exam. Well, we've gone through an hour of Q&A already, but we're not quite done. Stick around for our after show where I'm going to answer questions from you in just a moment. We also want to make you aware that there's some free resources available. What? Free? Yes, the exam objectives are free, and they tell you everything you could possibly be asked on this exam. This is a very unusual document in that other certifications don't use this level of detail. In fact, here is the exam objectives right here. It takes you through an overview of the exam, but it gives you a bullet by bullet breakdown of everything you need to know for this exam. If you can go through this list and check off everything in the official exam objectives, you're ready to take your exam. If you don't know everything listed on these exam objectives, you might not be ready yet. So this is a great overview, a great barometer of what you really know about this exam, and it's free. So this should probably be the first thing you download before you start your studies. It will be the last thing you reference before scheduling your exam. You can get this over at the CompTIA website. You can go to your favorite search engine and type in CompTIA Exam Objectives. It will take you there as your first hit. Or you can use the link that I've got on my site to take you over there. Go to professormesser.com/objectives. That will also take you over there. Make sure you get the latest version of these exam objectives by visiting this page. Don't visit random download links on the Google or anywhere else. Make sure you get these directly from CompTIA, and make sure you get the latest one, because they do occasionally make some minor changes, updates, and corrections to the exam objectives, and you don't want to be working from an older version. That's at professormesser.com/objectives. We do one of these study groups every month. For A+, we do 2 every month. Our next A+ study group is in a couple of days on March 13th. We'd love for you to come back on the 13th, where I have my Core 2 study group. And then in April, I'm scheduling our Core 1 study group on April the 8th and our Core 2 study group on April the 10th. Sometimes these dates can change. Sometimes they get moved around. The instant I make a change, I always update it in our calendar, which is found at professormesser.com/calendar. And if you're watching this video after April, you may want to check that calendar and make sure you know when the next live event is going to be. This is something I also put in our events channel on our Discord. So if you're one of our Discord attendees, you're one of the folks that hang out there and talk to us about A+, Network+, Security+, or life in general, our Discord has an events channel where I also update those. So I always make sure both of those are updated immediately if I ever make a change to the scheduling. So that might be something to consider or think about as you're planning your schedule and deciding what study group you'd like to attend. Well, we are done with the first hour, but we're not done with the study group. Stick around for the after show where I'm going to answer your questions. Don't forget about our discounted vouchers. If you're in the US or Canada, you can get those vouchers on our website at professormesser.com/vouchers and save a little bit of money when you take your exam. Don't forget about our course notes and practice exams. These might be very valuable for your study process. You watch the videos, you read a good book, maybe do some labs. Now you're ready to test yourself with some questions. These particular study materials are great for summarizing what's on those videos and then testing yourself to see if you're really ready for that exam. And of course, if you're on social media, hey, we are too. You can find us by simply typing in professormesser.com/ the name of the social media you would like to find us on. That's not the URL. You would replace that with, you know what I'm saying. So like professormesser.com/Discord, professormesser.com/X, professormesser.com/Twitter, professormesser.com/YouTube. You get the idea. And if you're looking for us and it's not on this list, just try it. For example, if you tried professormesser.com/LinkedIn, you'd find our LinkedIn page. So it's very easy to try. And if you get a 404 error, that means we're not on that particular social media. And if it's a social media site you like that you're on all the time, send us a note. Hit the contact us link at the top of the page. Send me a note that says, hey, why aren't you on this social media site? Maybe I should go get on that social media site. Should be a good one to try. That might be useful for the process that you're going through. Well, we've got a lot more to go through. We've already gone through an hour of Q&A. That can certainly get us to where we need to be for our questions and answers, but I'm sure you have questions as well, and I want to answer your questions in the after show. Stick around for that coming up next. Don't touch a thing. We'll be back to you in just a few seconds. Thank you for joining us in this first hour, and we will see you next time on the A+ Study Group. Thanks, everybody. Okay, now I have to click a few things on my side to get rid of my boxes on the screen. There we go. Those look good. Now I can push this. Now we're in good shape. Now I can talk again. There's a lot of talking there. Having them there. If you would like to submit a question for our after show, I will be sifting through them as we go. Let me bring up this screen so you can see an idea of what I'm talking about. There it is. You can submit questions for the second hour at any time. We will be moderating questions during the session, so your contribution will not appear on the screen immediately, but I will be looking through them on my side to figure out the details. So this is one where we will, in fact, be able to sift through the questions you have and get an understanding of some of the things you would like to talk about. I mentioned in the pre-show that I had for you an overview of the things that are associated with the most or the newer version of the exam. So I wanted to give you an overview of that. One moment, please. See if I can find out where I put it. It's got to be here somewhere. I think I put it in the one for the next study group, but I can pull it up so that we can look at it. This should be a good overview. A lot of people ask about this whenever there's a new version of the exam, and I want to be sure that a number of you aren't sort of jumping ahead and worrying about things that you should not have to worry about. So let's go through before we look at your questions. This is kind of a frequently asked question about these new versions of the exam. So this is the latest information we have on what is going to be the 220-1201 and the 220-1202. As many of you know, the current version is the 1101 and the 1102. So we're going from the 1100 series or the 11th series to the 12th series. And this 12th series, not surprisingly, is called the 220-1201 and 220-1202. These exams will be available on March the 25th. So as we sit here on March the 10th, 15 days from now, there will also be 2 new exams available that you could take. And one of the things you'll notice, however, is there's very little study material on the market yet. This is normal. Whenever CompTIA just released the exam objectives publicly less than a month ago. So all of the developers of content, all of the publishers, everyone who creates training materials is currently in the process of creating their content so they can get it out as soon as possible. But these things take time. And usually when an exam is released, for example, on March the 25th, there's a number of months that go by. Usually it takes about 2 to 3 months until you ever see a decent amount of options available on the market. That's just because that's how long it takes. And many of us have already been working for months to just get to this point there's much more that we need to finish up. This is an exciting time for anybody making content for this. So we behind the scenes, when the camera's not on, we're constantly creating a lot more information about what's there. What's important, though, is the exams that you would be taking today will remain available until September 25th. So that's why I tell people, don't think you're going to jump ahead to the new version straight away. You're probably not, because there's not enough study material yet, but you don't have to. The existing exams will still be available until September, the end of September. So you've got plenty of time to finish up your studies. Not a problem there. It's over 6 months from today. And this exam will still be available with the same information, with all the study materials that are available on the market today, with all of the information that everybody has already provided about the latest version of the exams. You're really taking the best possible version if you stick with the versions right now. Now, as we get closer to September 25th, then we'll want to make some decisions. Want to look to see, is some of the new material available on the market? How close are we getting to that date? Am I going to be able to finish up? We can make that decision months from now. But right now, if you are studying and working towards your A+, I would highly recommend you focus on the current version of the exam, the 220-1101 and the 220-1102. Now, as some people have asked in the chat room already, is there a difference really between these two? Most of the time when there is an update from one exam version to another, there is a difference of about 30%. 30% of the information is new. Some of the information has been dropped. The size of the exam often changes. They usually use this as an opportunity to revamp the information that you're learning. With the latest Security+, for example, 50% of the information was new. They completely revamped practically that exam, that half of the information on the 701 was not found on the 601. So that was a very big difference on the Security+. But A+ this time is a little bit different. If you think about 3 years ago, what we were doing, we were still dealing with COVID. We were still trying to get everything back up and running again, get back to full steam. In many places, we still are not yet at full speed because of a number of different problems. And one of the things that happened is the entire Windows process, the Windows development process, slowed down. Normally, when there's a new version of an A+ exam, there's a new version of Windows that goes along with it. And so the new version of the exam is changed quite a bit because we now have to learn everything that's new with that new version of Windows. But here's the interesting part, is that the 1101 version that was released 3.5 years ago, there has not been a new version of Windows. We are still, before we get to that, we're still on Windows 11. We were on Windows 11 when the 1101 came out. We're still on Windows 11 when the 1201 comes out. There's no new Windows information we need to learn on this exam. So because of that, you will find that the differences in this edition, this new edition versus this current edition is very similar to each other. Much less has changed than what you would normally find. So let's have a look at our first Venn diagram to understand this. So the 1101 and the 1201 are here. On the left side is the 1101. On the right side is the 1201. Look how much green is in the middle of these. Everything green in the middle is information that is identical between both of these exams. So you can see that 87%, almost 90% of the content is the same between the existing Core 1 and what will be the new Core 1. That's a very small number of differences. You can see that the number of objectives is even almost the same, 396 versus 391. Those are about right. If you were to count, you probably get numbers that were very close to that. I count a particular way with the bullets and what information you're really learning and what information is just a title. But those are pretty good numbers. That's a pretty good comparison of the two. So if you are currently studying for your Core 1 and you're worried, I may have to shift over when the new version gets here because I may not be able to finish by September, no problem. There's only 10% more that you need to know. Really 13% more than you need to know. So this would make it much easier to move through to create that. Now, what about the Core 2 exam? Do we have the same flexibility there It's not quite the same, but it's pretty close. On the Core 2 exam, there are 580 objectives on the 1102. They've increased it a bit on the 1202. There's 655 objectives, so a little bit bigger than the old exam. Now, one of the things that you'll notice, though, quite a bit from the 1102, still in the 1202, 80%. So they have added 85 more objectives. That's what this blue part is on the right side on the 1202. So not quite this a like-to-like configuration, but in the world of CompTIA changes, of updates of these exams, these are still very close to each other. I mean, 20%. That is probably the 20% and the 13% are certainly two of the lowest percentage changes that we have seen since we've been tracking the A+, which goes back for me to the 600 series. So that is quite a minimal change to these different versions. This makes it very easy for you to continue with your studies now, because you don't have to worry about there being a significant change if you have to change in midstream to the new version. I don't think at this point most of you would have to, because you have over 6 months to finish both of these exams. But if for some reason something happens in your world, something happens with life, something happens with what's going on, you may have to make that change to go from the 1100 series to the 1200 series. What you should know is there's not much you would have to learn, that most everything is the same, except for 13% on the Core 1 and 20% on the Core 2, which is a relatively low amount. So keep that in mind. Those are important things to keep in mind. And I think for those of you that are working on your studies, you can relax now. There's not going to be a dramatic change between these two versions, which gives you a lot of flexibility with how you do your scheduling for these two versions. You're not going to see this happen again, I don't think, in our lifetime. So take advantage of the fact that we don't have to worry this time through. This is very nice that it is that way. Folks that dealt with the Security+ changes from 601 to 701, where half of the exam was different and it was huge, they didn't have the flexibility that you have with the A+. So that's great. I think that's an important part of it. There will be a set of articles that I am working on now that will detail exactly what topics are dropped in an exam and what topics have been added. You can look for those in the coming weeks. It's basically, you're able to do this now. You can download both exam objectives and look through them yourself. So that's what I did. So that's an easy one so that you're familiar with it. And of course, we will have new videos for the new version. There will be new course notes. There will be new practice exams. These things will be uploaded and we will have them available on our website when they are completed. There's no specific time frame for this. It's something that as we create them, we upload them and make them available. As we finish the book, we make it available on our website. So that's kind of nice that whenever we create these, we aren't pushing ourselves to a particular date. I feel that making it right is better than making it fast. So you may find that some of our study materials take another month or two to come out. I prefer doing that rather than just rushing out something that's just good enough. I don't think that anybody should be studying for an industry certification as important as these and just have things that are just good enough. I don't think that's something you should do. You should have the best possible study materials. They should be the highest quality study materials. And in order to do that, it takes a little more time. So thank you for bearing with us. But we will have some information available for you on day one. I've already uploaded some of the videos to YouTube. Don't tell anybody that you can't see them yet. They're invisible to you, but we're already putting stuff out there, getting ready for the day. So, and we're excited about that too. It's always fun to have those up there. Yeah, nobody knows. So now let's go through the questions that you sent to me. Thank you for submitting these. If you would like to submit questions, you can do that at any time using the URL that is on your screen at professormesser.com/QA and submit those questions to us to be able to answer these. So quite a bit on here. We have a few people that have asked a number of questions. Let's just jump into these and see what we have. I'm not going to spend a lot of time sort of reading through or working through the details. Let's start with a question that I have from Haley. Haley asks, what does the process look like for taking the Core 1 and Core 2 exams at home? I know you've mentioned the process when taking it in person, but I'm curious how it differs since I'm looking to take the exam at home. Thank you. It's interesting, this home process, it is one that's been worked on well before COVID even happened. But I think when we were all stuck at home, not being able to go out anywhere, the process was sort of hurried up. They finished up that project very quickly so that you could take your exams at home. And now that we can actually leave our houses and be in the world with other humans, we can still take our exam at home, which is very convenient because there's obviously exam centers that you can physically visit if you're in a relatively large metropolitan area. But if you are outside of that area, some people are hours away by car from the latest or the closest exam center. So that's not a great way to take your exam. You almost have to plan if you're in that situation to take the exam. So if you're taking your exam at home, think of the challenges with that. Taking your exam at home, it's not a secure environment. Your exam centers are secure. They've set it up. It's got privacy. They've got noise controls in place. They've got a way to monitor you. They can make sure that the exam is being done ethically. They can make sure that there's no problem with the exam. It's important to be able to do that. But if you're taking your exam at home, your home is not the same environment. So if you go out to the CompTIA website, they have a section that talks about taking an in-person exam and what is expected of you. Now, the exam itself, the software, the user interface, the process is identical to taking the exam in a testing center. On your screen, it looks the same as the person who's looking at their screen in a testing center. So you can at least be rest assured that the experience on the screen is identical. But the experience not on the screen, very different. So one of the things they talk about here is reviewing the testing policies and procedures. So there is a set of testing policies for working through the exam. You should absolutely look through those. And there is also, I think they probably have a list of these on their screen to be able to see what is expected of you when you are working in this. Now, this is one where it's an in-person exam. Let's go to the questions, the testing online exam. Look how different this is. They have a whole system test that you run. You have to look through all of the requirements for doing this and what options are available. In fact, they have this system test you download and put on your system to make sure that it can even perform the exam. So they give you an explanation about this and what you need to do. Also, there are a series of requirements in the exam room itself. So you have to know what you can have on your desk, what you cannot have on your desk. You can't have people in the room. Nobody can walk behind you during the exam. There can't be any noises. There's a lot of rules and regulations so that your home is just as secure as an actual in-testing center. So that means that there's extra things you'll probably have to do to be able to meet this. They talk about some of this, but there's a webpage you can go to schedule. And when you schedule your online exam, there's links there that will take you to the process of how do I set up this room in a way that is going to work properly for the exam itself. The testing policies, the on-view testing policies is what you're looking for. That's the name of the software, the service that is used to provide the exam. And it's from a company called Pearson that handles that exclusively. And they give you what the technical requirements are, what you have to set your resolution and scaling to, what the internet bandwidth would be. How do you get the space ready in your room? They tell you, here's what you need. You need a computer. You need a single monitor. If there's extra monitors here, you can't use those. So I can't take a test here. There's way too many monitors in the studio to be able to take a test in my studio. So I can't take mine here, or I'd have to unplug and disconnect and get out of the way all of these others. So always a challenge to work through that. Make sure you're familiar with this process. It's all on the CompTIA website. I would highly recommend, well, that's not what we wanted. That's what we wanted. I would highly recommend you look through the details of that so that you understand what is expected of you on the exam, what the process should be, what you should be ready for. I would also recommend you go look through some of the online exam experiences that people have had and documented on the CompTIA subreddit. That is at reddit.com/r/CompTIA. That is valuable feedback because you might run into a couple of things you weren't expecting. You might not realize that you can't have someone walk behind you because they will cancel your exam right then and you lose all the money you spent taking that exam. Or that suddenly the doorbell rings and you get up to answer the door. You can't do that. That's something you have to know these rules. For example, here's one you may not realize. You can't sit on the exam and do this. You can submit questions for the second or the study group anytime. You can't talk. You can't cover your mouth. These are things. You also can't do that in a testing center either. I hear people all the time complain, I can't cover my mouth. I can't talk in this exam. Well, you could never talk in the exam. You also can't talk at home, which seems silly because there's nobody at home but you, except if you think about why they are doing that, it's relatively obvious why you can't talk during the exam. So make sure you're familiar with the rules and regulations, because if they pop up a message on your screen saying, remove your hand from your mouth, and you didn't know there was a rule for that, you might be thrown by that, and that's going to mess up the whole feng shui of the whole exam experience. And that's not what you want either. You want, oh, I had my hand in front of my mouth. Of course, you're not supposed to do that. Sorry about that. Let's continue. So that's one of those things that's important, is knowing the rules also makes it very easy for you to roll with the exam experience. So make sure you read through it. You're familiar with it. You know what other people have gone through. You look at their tips and tricks, especially if you're taking your exam at home. I think I've said this in the past, and I think I still go with it, that if I had to take the exam right now, I'd take it at a testing center. I just don't want to deal with the hassle of setting up my house, setting up a system, having a room available, and then hopefully my internet will stay up and running during the exam. But if I've got something like this going on, certainly my internet connectivity will fail. It always fails when I need it to do something good. So that's an example of why going to a testing center might be a better choice. But as I mentioned, maybe you can't get to a testing center. Maybe the testing centers in your area don't have any availability. Maybe the closest testing center to you is 4 hours away. So doing it online and at home is a much better solution. And if I was in that particular boat, I would probably take my exam at home as well. So that's my perspective. Yours might be a little bit different, which is fine. Figure out the one that makes the most sense for you and go with it. I think that's a good way to approach it. Find the one that you will be comfortable with. I think that's the best way to go about it. Let's do some more questions from you. I'm going to move some of the stuff off to the other area, and let's have a look at the different options we have available here. This is a good one. This is more about studying and the process of studying. And I think it's one that we all we struggle with constantly. This is from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, hello, Messer. I'm currently studying for the Core 2, and I plan on taking my exam next week. So far, I have done well on all 3 practice exams and answered most of your recorded study group questions correctly. But I'm still nervous, and I'm exhausted from going over my notes constantly. Do you have any tips to prevent yourself from being burnt out from studying? This is an age-old question. This is a complicated problem that everybody handles a little bit differently. This sounds like me getting ready to take an exam, quite honestly. I am not a great exam taker. I'm the worst exam taker. I always put too much pressure on an exam, even when the exam itself has no pressure associated with it. If I was to fail the exam, the world would continue to turn. I'm not really losing much from it, but I worry about passing these exams. I internalize it and worry. It seems like sometimes I spend more time worrying about the results of the exam than actually taking the exam itself. So anxiety is always a concern with something. And if you care about these certifications and getting a job and moving up in the industry and having a career in IT, you can see why you might be a little bit anxious about taking these exams. These are important exams, and I think that's why a lot of us worry about them. So first thing you should know is that if you don't pass your exam, no one will die. There will not be any car crashes. The world will continue to turn. The sun will come up. The sun will go down. There's not a problem. If you fail an exam, here's what happens. You study and you take the exam again. Ta-da, all done. That was the answer. That's what happens. Really not much more than that. So already you kind of have to think ahead of worst case scenario and understand the worst case scenario isn't really that bad at all. Now let's go back to you passing the exam, because that's what all of us would like to pass the exam the first time through. That's not always happened for me either. Sometimes I've taken exams 2 and 3 times before I pass the exam. Sometimes that happens. In this case, you've gone through the videos, you've gone through my practice exams, which I feel are written with a similar difficulty level as the actual exam. It has a similar style, has a similar tone, has a similar structure to the actual exam questions, and certainly covers the topics that you will find in the official exam objectives. So here you've gone through all of those. You've gone to study groups. You've answered the questions in the study groups well. So the question you should be asking yourself is, why am I still nervous about this? Maybe it is that you're just excited and you put a lot of importance on this exam. Perfectly reasonable reason to be nervous. That is exactly normal. That's effectively what we all hope that we are concerned about. You want to take this seriously, and you are. So even though you think nervousness equals not prepared, that may not necessarily be the case. Nervousness just might represent importance, and that's fine. You just need to internalize that in a way that makes sense for you. Now, sometimes we just get nervous about them. I've mentioned often whenever I'm taking an exam and I go to an exam center, they check me in, I can already tell the blood pressure's going up. They take my ID, I put all of my items into the locker, they hand me the key, put it in my pocket. I'm already having to think about staying calm. They take me to the room, they sit me down, and already I can tell that the adrenaline is going, and it's difficult to read. Not difficult to understand the words on the screen, difficult to comprehend the words on the screen. So here's an example. I'd be sitting down for my exam. First question will come up that says, "Hello, Messer. I'm currently studying for Core 2 and I plan to take my exam next week." And I don't understand what that means. Let me read it again. "Hello, Messer. I'm currently studying for Core 2. I plan to take my exam next week." There was a question in there about a week. I'm going to have to read that one again. Let's read it again. Messer, so I have to read the question multiple times because I'm so now ramped up with the anxiety that it becomes difficult to comprehend English. That's not unusual, by the way. Other people have sent me notes saying, yep, do the same thing. Here's my tip for you. Here's what I do is I have to get that out of my system. I have to get rid of the adrenaline. You can't really run in place. You can't do jumping jacks. You can't do push-ups. But what you can do is spend some time sitting in the chair. So one of the things that you will notice before the exam starts is you have to agree to something called the candidate agreement. This is effectively a non-disclosure and a set of rules that you agree to abide by for the exam process. And it's a nice long document. It's a big contract. And they give you, I think, 15 minutes to go through it. A lot of time. 15 minutes, great. I'm in the chair. They've started the exam. They left the room. Now it's up to me. And you know what most people do? They scroll to the bottom and they click OK. They click accept. And they continue on. I don't do that anymore. I read the candidate agreement. I use all 15 minutes. And even if I'm not able to comprehend all of the English that is in front of me, I still read through the whole thing. Because halfway through, starting to settle down, starting to get rid of some of the anxiety, we're burning off some of that adrenaline. Hey, I'm starting to understand what I'm reading again. I'm starting to comprehend what I see on the screen. I feel more human now. I feel like more of myself. And by the time I finish that 15 minutes of reading or just sitting there, maybe I read it. We're just going to sit back. Let the clock tick down. We're just going to let it finish what it's doing. And then at the end of the 10 or 15 minutes or whatever they give you, I accept. Let us now begin the exam. And that just gives me a chance to get comfortable in the space, to get rid of some of the extra adrenaline, and to really now be in a better place where I can focus on the exam. So if you are someone who is running through that anxiety and you're having a problem taking the exam, first know that no matter what happens, the worst case scenario is you just take the exam again. But if you are sitting there at the very beginning and you do feel like you need a little bit of extra time to kind of calm down a little bit, read the exam, read the candidate agreement. It's a great way to just hang out, relax, take your time. The clock for the exam's not started yet. This is a 15-minute block just for the candidate agreement. Once you start the exam, it's a separate 90-minute clock. So don't worry that you're taking time away from your exam. Don't think you have to hurry through the candidate agreement. Nope, you're good. The exam does not officially start until you agree to the candidate agreement. The clock doesn't officially start until you click OK and you say, yes, begin the exam. That may be a good way to go about it. So that's what I would recommend too. If you're someone who is dealing with that level of anxiety, that's a pretty high level of anxiety. I'm not passing out in the exam. It's not that bad. But I feel it's very important to do well in these exams, and I want to give myself every opportunity to understand what I'm reading in front of me. So another one of those things that might help you as you're going through the exam, might be something to consider. Remember that you can submit a question at any time with the link that you see on your screen. Go to ProfessorMesser.com/QA and submit your question to the list. There were a couple questions in here. I won't put these up. But there were a couple questions in here about, we talked earlier today about the A+ practice exams books that you've seen. I have A+ practice exams book. I have another one for the Security+ exam. I don't have one currently for the Network+ exam. A lot of people are always asking me, what about a Network+ exam book? I'd love to publish one. I'd love this year to be able to publish one, have it available. We don't have any announcement to make. We don't have any specific dates to mention on that. So hopefully you see one this year. I would love to do that. I'd love to have one available. I think those would be useful for everyone to be able to take advantage of. Let's keep going through the list of questions that you have sent. So let's have a look at these. We talked a little about the 1101 and 1102 and the 1201 and 1202. So I'm going to skip over a couple of those questions that you submitted. Now that we've gone through those details, you now have that available to you. Let's talk about picking the right certification. This is a question from Colby who asks, I graduated last year with an IT degree, still have not gotten a job. I want to jump to getting my CCNA, but someone said I should get my CompTIA A+. Those are two very different certifications. What would you recommend for someone trying to become a network engineer? Well, as a former network engineer, I think I can speak to this one, and certainly how the industry looks at networking in general. I love networking. Huge part of my career was spent in network management, network troubleshooting, protocol analysis, and it's a fascinating part of the world of technology. So one of the things that I look at over understanding what's available to me is I don't start with what I want to do necessarily. I want to know what other people would like to see from me. So in your question, Colby, you mentioned I wanted to get a CCNA. Somebody else said I should get an A+. And this is a similar question I get. Usually it's, I want to get a CCNA, and somebody else said, what about Network+? So let's answer the questions in the same way. If you're looking towards a career in networking, there's usually a path, a series of steps you go through to get to a point where someone will trust you with their switches and their routers. And the first place, though, I would like to go to is that you got an IT degree, but you're trying to get your first job in the industry. This is one of the hardest parts, by the way, is getting that first job. Everybody is looking at a resume that has no formal type of experience on it, but there are things you can do to help yourself out. Before we get to specifics of this, what I want to mention is that in this YouTube video description of this video is a link to a video I created called how to get a job in IT with no experience. It's a 30-minute video, literally 30 minutes and 1 second in length. And as many of you know, if you've watched my course videos, there's not a lot of slack in my videos. There's not a lot of, we don't do a lot of jokes. There's no jokes in my video. You don't hear me doing a lot of jokes because it takes time. And I'm trying to give you exactly what you need to get certified. Well, this video is produced in a very similar way. There's a lot of information I want to give you on things you can do to help yourself get that first job in IT with no experience. And it's really a list of 4 different elements that you want to focus on. One is to get a formal education, really a 2-year degree, a 4-year degree from a college or university. It doesn't necessarily have to be a technical degree, but that does help you. In Colby's case, you already have an IT degree. Click, check, good, yes, fantastic. Second thing is you want an industry certification. Basically the question that Colby was asking. We're going to come back to that one in just a bit. The third one is that you have some type of work that you have done in the field. This doesn't necessarily have to be professional experience, but it could be some type of experience that you've done in a volunteer mode. Maybe it's some type of home lab that you have set up that you can talk about, especially if it's a relatively complex set of technologies that you've created in your home lab. And in that video, I give you some examples of what some impressive home labs might look like. The fourth is, and this is a big one, and I think it is dismissed way too often, is you know someone who works there. Now this is that old school term of it's not what you know, it's who you know. But more practically, it's not just what you know, it's also who you know. It's not just any one thing, it's all of these things combined together. And we're not talking about knowing somebody in the organization with that you go to their house for dinner and you watch their kids and you send them cards and letters on the holidays. That's not what we're talking about. We're talking about a professional acquaintance. You want to think of it that way. You know someone who works there. They know of you, and probably in more of a professional term. One of the best ways to meet people in your area that are in this field is to attend similar events. So if you are in a relatively large area, there's probably a Cisco users group, a Palo Alto Networks users group, an ISSA security user group, or any other user group, Microsoft user group. Go to these in-person user groups because that's where all of the other tech people are. And those are tech people that probably already have jobs at some of these other companies. This is where you have to now start doing some research yourself. And I mentioned this in the video, is that you need to understand what employers in your area are looking for. Are employers in your area looking for A+? Are they looking for Security+? Are they looking for a cloud-based certification? Are they looking for a CCNA? If you don't look to see what entry-level jobs are out there and what they want, how are you supposed to make an educated decision on which path you go down for a certification? And because this is something that is not, because this is something that you have not written, you're not the one making these decisions, the employers are making these decisions. So even if you look at this and they're looking for a certification I wouldn't expect them to look for. Who cares? They're looking for it. So you might want to put that on your list of certifications that might be good to have. Some certifications that might be good to have are the ones that employers are asking about. Now, if they're asking about a CCNA, go get your CCNA. If they're asking for an A+, go get an A+. Those are two very different certifications with different requirements. CCNA is not an entry-level certification. A+ certainly is. So that's why I tell people all the time, I don't know which one you should take. I don't know which certification you should get because I don't know what you want to do for a career, and I don't know what employers in your area are looking for. So in that video, I described the process of creating a spreadsheet, putting all of this information into a spreadsheet, finding all of the jobs in your area that really are a good fit for you, You obviously don't want to choose jobs that you're not qualified for. But if a job is an entry-level position, you feel like you're qualified for it, put that in your list. Then once you've accumulated this list of 10, 15 jobs in your area, you should start to see some trends. And that might help you decide which one of these certifications would be a better choice. Now, ultimately, if you are moving towards the world of networking, you will probably get into taking Network Plus, getting a CCNA, and then some networking certifications that go beyond that. But I will tell you that if you are really interested in understanding and setting yourself up for the best possible showing in front of an employer, you should probably work on what they would like to see, which, by the way, may not be what you want to do. And that's where the conflict comes in. You have to make your own decisions on, I don't necessarily want to get an A+, but they're hiring people that have an A+. And that's really your best bet, is to get that first job, get your foot in the door. At that point, once you have a job in IT, the world opens up to you, because IT is a big area with plenty of different disciplines associated with it. You can go into operating systems, you can go into networking, you can go into cloud, you can go into now AI, you can go into security. And you have some level of flexibility to move into those areas once you are in the door. First, you got to get in the door. So there might be a little bit of you doing things that perhaps you not necessarily want to do. This is what your parents always told you would happen. Like, there will be things in life that you do not want to do, and you will have to do them. This might be one of them. They were right again. What? I didn't want to listen to them, but they're right every time. So that's a good example of how you might want to adjust what you are doing to best fit the industry around you, the employers around you, and that might take a little more strategy to come up with the best idea. I think if you do that, you will position yourself quite well for whatever might be available to you. You might just find that right connection. Don't forget about the people you know. Meet those people at a user group meeting. Oh, there was something I saw online earlier that I thought was interesting. I'm not sure if it was real. I have a feeling I was looking at an ad, but the strategy this person used in their post was interesting. One of the things they mentioned is they found a company in their area that they wanted to work at. And they went on LinkedIn to find everybody who worked in that organization. And they sent them a LinkedIn message and said, hey, I noticed that your company has this particular position open in the help desk. I feel like I'm very qualified for that particular job. But instead of me sending a resume directly to that job posting, would you be willing to send that resume in for me? And you may be thinking, well, why would we do that? Well, you are now starting this rapport with someone who already works there. You know someone who's there. They're not necessarily vouching for you because obviously they only know you from this online message. But here's the thing. Here's why this would work, is because the interesting part of it is that almost every organization has some type of referral program for their employees, which means if you as an employee hand a resume to HR and that person gets hired, you get a cash bonus. What? A cash bonus? Now I'm interested. Now I want to know. This is why if you go to a user group meeting and you meet somebody who works at one of these places, they might even ask you proactively, oh, are you looking for a job? You should send me your resume. There are a lot of people I know that are resume collectors who are just employees of the company. And they're collecting resumes because they get paid on it, because they're the person who brought this individual into their organization and they get credit for the job. So simply asking somebody, would you be willing to submit my resume for this position? First, that's something you may not even think people would be interested in unless you realize, wait, there might be a few $100 in their pocket just by doing this. They might be willing to do that. And then you can ask them other questions. How do you like working there? What do you think of this open position? What are the things that you've seen in that part of the company that they would like to have? Do you have a lot of window? You can have a conversation there back and forth with all of those pieces of it. So make sure I don't know that I would do something like that, but make sure that if you're communicating with somebody, they really do work there and that they actually send your resume in. I would hate for you to send your resume and they go, yeah, I'll send it in. Sure, I will. And then they never do that. But it was very interesting that they made that happen. I guess you could ask them of that. And then if nothing happens in a week, you could always send it in yourself. So that was pretty interesting, I thought. An interesting strategy to kind of get around the HR machine and submit something as someone who is internal to the organization, which inherently will have a bit more priority associated with it. So there you go. That's that. I don't know that I would do that, but I found that an interesting read at the very least. So if you are working along those lines to figure out what I should be doing, should I do CCNA or A+, you're totally in a place where you have no idea what you want to do if you're trying to decide between those two. So spend a little time on your current job environment in your particular geographical area. And I promise you that will provide you with much more clarity and will allow you to start creating a strategy on how you can take a certification now, work up to the CCNA, get the job working in network administration, network planning, network design, maybe work for Cisco directly or Palo Alto Networks directly. Because once you have that level of knowledge, you can now apply that towards many different parts of the IT field. Now you're very familiar with how to set up a network in the cloud. You're very familiar with how to configure a next generation firewall to be able to connect and secure a particular network organization. So make sure you do the legwork. And if you do the legwork, you'll have a much better strategy on which direction. And in my mind, it should be very obvious at that point, should you study for A+ or should you study for CCNA? And when you make that decision, you will be much more educated and much more secure in that decision that you are making. So hopefully that's given you some ideas and some thoughts. And go watch the video. Watch it at 2x speed. You can finish it in 15 minutes. Might give you some good tips and tricks to work through. That video was made from the perspective of someone who was a hiring manager of systems engineers at the highest level of very large technology companies based in California, just to give you a perspective. So let's now keep the party going. More questions and things that are going through. I got a lot of questions that have come in. Some of these are duplicates. I'm sort of skipping through the other ones that are here. And some of these are duplicated based on the video I mentioned earlier. So people, for example, were asking about different home lab projects. I give you an example of some of those in that video. So feel free to have a look at that video of how to get a job in IT with no experience. That will give you the breakdown in a lot of those. Let's keep going through that list. There is quite a bit of a lot of questions coming in. A lot of you guys have great questions, by the way. Let's see this one. This one came in. I think I remember this one from the chat as well, from Austin, who asks, I have a job offer I've accepted. First, congratulations. Fantastic. This is great news, Austin. Good to hear it. Now the hard part. Austin asks, it's based on me being able to get my A+ certification within 30 days. First, who came up with this? I have a lot of questions. Okay, let's keep going with the question. What would be your advice of the best way to get this cert within this time frame? I've been in IT for 15 years. I have a pretty good general knowledge, just not in deep detail. This is a huge opportunity for me and my family, and I really want to pass and get this job. Any info would be awesome. Thanks. This is not an unusual problem, by the way. This is something I often see. This is a question that often comes in for this. So you need to get an A+ certification. First, who came up with this 30-day thing for the A+ exam? 2 separate certifications, and it's 30 days. So I don't know if this is the job starts in 30 days and I have to have it done by then, or once I start the job, this 30-day clock is ticking and they expect me to earn the certification in 30 days, which, by the way, is a ridiculous amount of time. That's way too short for the A+. It's almost like the person who's just created a random number, let's just say 30 days, without any context as to anything that this would entail. Now, even after saying that, I'm saying this from the perspective of someone who has no experience in the field already. That's not the case with Austin, though. So all of that I just said probably doesn't apply to you, Austin, because you're already familiar with Windows. You probably have already seen all these crazy printers you have after 15 years in the industry. You've already got a familiarity with cloud-based technologies. You've already probably run some scripts. So a lot of the things that are on the A+ will be very, very, and probably very, very familiar to you, too familiar to you, because you've already gone through it. You've already had to fight with it. You've already had to deal with the late nights. You've already had to deal with the crash systems. You probably have some familiarity with these things. But there are employers out there that require you to have a particular certification. And this is a good example of one. So let's kind of focus on this. What would you do to be able to learn everything you need to know and get through both of these exams in 30 days? This is, first, let's be clear, even if you've been in the industry, this is a relatively aggressive time frame. It's effectively 15 days per exam. See, it already doesn't make sense. Give me the phone number of the person who came up with the 30 days, please. Send them to me so I can give them a call and give them a little voicemail. I'd love to talk to them about what they think this takes, what it really involves. But for those of you that have been in the industry, this might be okay. I've had people come to my website who are very familiar in the industry. They know the content. They've just never taken the certification. They put their own computers together. They work with Windows all the time. They're familiar with the Linux operating system. They probably have a Mac OS system. All of these things they probably have done before. And I've had people come to my site, read through and study the exam objectives, go through the videos one time, and go take the exam and pass it in a week. Both exams in 1 week. So it can be done. And if you've already been in the industry, it might be easier than you think. If I was in your position, here's what I would do. I would go get the exam objectives. That may be a good place to start. So go to professormesser.com/objectives, and we can start with the core 1 objectives. Here they are. And I would do the current version of the exam, the 2201101 and the 2201102. Do not, in your scenario, do not wait for the 1201 and 1202. Be an enormous mistake. Enormous mistake for that time frame that you're looking at. Stick with the 1101 and 1102. There's a huge amount of study materials on the market. Relatively speaking, it is a mountain of study materials compared to the new version. There's practically nothing available for the new version right now. There's plenty of books. There's plenty of videos. There's plenty of tests. There's plenty of people that have taken it. There's plenty of feedback you can read about on Reddit. There's just tons of info available to you. This is the version you want to take, the 1101 and the 1102. Do not take the new versions. So knowing that, get the exam objectives. Start with the very first one. Mobile devices, section 1.1, given a scenario, install and configure laptop hardware and components. Do you know how to install a laptop battery? Been in the industry 15 years. I'm going to say check. So in your PDF reader, I'm being a little bit sarcastic. I apologize. It's late in the study group. Battery. Yes, I'm good there. I know how to replace a battery. I understand the batteries. I understand how they work in a laptop. We're good. Next, keyboard/keys. You might have never replaced a keyboard on a laptop. Watch my video. I show you how easy it is. There's a couple of screws. You probably replace a ribbon cable and you're good. All right, that was easy. You don't even have to do this on the exam. They don't put a laptop in front of you on the exam and say, fix it, which would be awesome, by the way, but they don't do that. The best they do is maybe ask you, when you're replacing a keyboard, what is the process? What do you do? And then you have to pick from 4 things what you would be doing there. So knowing the process is enough for this exam. Memory. You've probably replaced memory in a laptop. If you've done that, you can check that one off your list. So this is what you should do, is go through this list, see what things you know, see what things you don't know. You can always, if you know it just solid, that you've replaced a hard drive in a laptop or a desktop and replaced it with an SSD, you could just check that one off your list. You're good. You probably don't even need to watch the video. But if any of these you think, oh, maybe I'm not as clear on that one as I think, maybe instead I watch the video on that particular section because I sort of know it, but I don't know it much at all. And then there might be topics in this list where you're just very sure you aren't even sure what they're talking about. So you might want to comment on these and say, I definitely need to watch the video that deals with these particular features. And then you can mark those as red. So now you have kind of a green, yellow, red light here that you can use to direct you to a video or to a specific topic. Then once you know it, you can mark it green and keep it going. So that is exactly what you should be doing to understand how much of this you know, how much of this you don't know. And if you haven't started that 30-day clock yet, do this now so that you can understand, oh, I might be able to get through this in a few days. Or I might take all 30 days because I have a lot more yellow and red here than I do green. I don't know. Everybody's a little bit different. So go through this list. Check out. You can do this right now. Download it from the CompTIA website. It's the CompTIA Exam Objectives. You can go to professormesser.com/objectives and go through that list and start marking these through. And then if you have a whole section where everything's green, you can skip that video, but you might have a section where something is not quite. These videos I have are not very long. Some of them are around 7 to 12 minutes. You can run them at 1.5 or 2x speed. I try to talk very plainly in my videos with good audio so that you can go through at 2x speed and still basically understand what I'm saying. And since you've been in the industry so long, you're probably not going to have a problem catching the technology words that I'm using and the terminology that I'm embedding into the presentation itself. It might be very obvious to you. So I think since you've been in the industry for 15 years, I think you got a pretty good chance of getting through both of these in 30 days with no problem. I don't think it's going to be an issue. Just constantly be studying. You know, always be studying. That's what you want to do. It's just constantly have the course notes, the books, the videos, whatever you're using, always have it available, always read through it, always get familiar with it. It's going to be pretty important for this. So that's why I would focus on those things. And even though, as I've already shown you, the difference between the 1101 and the 1201 and the difference between the 1102 and the 1202 are very similar to each other, there are still minor differences. Nothing too dramatic, but there are still minor differences between them. And that's why I think you should stick with the current version of the exam, the one that's currently available. We still have another, today's the 11th, and this thing comes out on the 25th. You still got 24 days before this thing's even released. You still got 2 or 3 weeks. So you could already have one of these exams passed by the time the new series is released. That's why I'm telling you, do not look at the new series for this. Focus on the current series and you'll be fine. I think that's where you should focus. And I think that's a pretty good set of strategies. That's how I would approach it. That's how I would just step through it. It's now just keep cutting away at it. Just keep marking those bullets, turning everything you can to green, and then go take the exam. I think that's one of the best things you can do. It might be the best way to approach that. So best of luck, and let us know how it goes. We'll know on the next, in the April study group. I would love, no pressure. I would love to know or don't put that pressure on if that's too much. But it would be interesting, and we could share that and see how that goes. And I still want to know who said 30 days. I'm gonna find out. I want more information about that one. Let's go to other questions on your list. Let me bring up real quick important information on my side so that I can see what time it is. Or we're way over time. So let's do another couple questions. I've been talking way too much today on these details and break it down. So since we are talking a lot today about the 1100 series and the 1200 series, let's go to this question from Noah. Says, hey, say I get the 1101, I pass it. I've now passed that particular exam. And then I don't take the 1102 before September 25th. Well, I have to take the 1101 again. Oh no. Once the 25th hits, you're done. You can no longer take the 1100 series. So you have to take both and pass both the 1101 and the 1102 before September 25th. I know you put in your message September 20th. September 25th is the retirement date. So when that September 25th happens, if you have not passed both of those exams, you now have to start over. So that's why it's important, especially for A+, that you're able to pick and choose the right series for the time frame that you have. Maybe you know that there's a big project you're working on at work that's not going to be done for another 3 or 4 months. Well, in that case, why would you start with the 1100 series? You're going to need to wait until your project's over anyway. Then you can focus on the 1200 series. But this is an important consideration. And unfortunately, this is something that gets people every time there's an update, is they will take and pass one of the exams, and then time will run out and they will not pass the second exam before it retires. And it's tragic to me. It's like, oh, we just missed it. And you've spent all that time and all that money on both of these exams. And now you effectively have to start over. You have to get new study materials because there are enough differences that you don't want to study the wrong information. And at least you have plenty of time. But this is one of those scenarios where you've wasted time and money and resources on that previous version. So that is an important consideration, Noah, that if you are planning to complete your A+ certification with the 1100 series, make sure you pass both exams before September 25th. Ideally, well before September 25th, because that is the retirement date. And so that unfortunately hits people all the time. I tell you, on September 26th, I will get emails from people that will say, I took one and passed it. I wasn't able to pass the other one. Now what do I do? And it's kind of sad that I have to send them back a note going, oh, you have to start over. You have to deal from the very beginning now. Now, fortunately, if that is you, don't let it be you, but if that is you on September 26th, you've already seen that fortunately, you're not starting from ground zero. A huge amount of the exam is similar, and you only have to learn the 18% that's different or the 20% that's different. So 13% or 20, I think, is those two numbers. So depending on the exam that you're taking. So that is, if there is a good part, if there is a little shiny part of the cloud, a little silver lining that we could bring into this entire scenario, that is our silver lining, is that it is a minimum of information that we would now need to learn additionally over what we already know. And one of the things I didn't mention is we drop stuff out of the exam too. So you will have learned things that now you won't even use because it's not on the exam anymore. And there's quite a few of those. CompTIA has really adjusted these exams on the new version. So there's less rote memorization and more knowledge about technology, which I think is a welcome change. There's still a lot of memorization. Don't get me wrong. There's still plenty of port numbers you need to know. You're not getting out of it that easy. But there's less rote memorization on the new version. It's not a huge difference, but it's just something to keep in mind. There is a process. There's a method to the madness whenever they make these changes to the certifications. So that's it. So that's really the important part of this. You will be able to purchase vouchers for the latest or for the current certification exam as long as you need to. Whenever you buy an A+ voucher to take the exam, you can apply that voucher to any available A+ exam. If you ever look at the CompTIA website, I'm using my hands as if we can't show you this on the screen. Let's go to the CompTIA store. I'm going to bring that up at store.comptia.org so that we can see it. Here we are at the CompTIA store. Now, hopefully you're buying these vouchers from my website. I don't know why you go to the store to do this, but I wanted to show you this because these are the same vouchers that I have on my store that are on this store. Notice they say here, certification vouchers for the A+ exam 2201101 or 2201102. Now, when the new exam is released, this will say exam 2201101, 2201102, 2201201, or 2201202. So one voucher can be used for any of those 4 exams. So don't worry, they're not gonna get rid of A+ vouchers that allow you to take the current version of the exam. You don't have to buy your vouchers now, and I don't recommend you do if you're not ready to take your exam. Wait until you are ready to take your exam to buy your vouchers, because they have a 12-month expiration on them. You have to complete your exam 12 months from the date you purchase your voucher. So I know that's a long time and usually doesn't matter for most people. For some people, it does. So if you were to purchase a voucher today, you could use it for the 1101 or 1102. On March 25th, that same voucher could even be applied to the new exam if you wanted to take the new exam. So any A+ voucher works for any available A+ exam. You don't have to worry about that part. You don't have to worry that you're buying something you can't use later. Not an issue. You'll be fine. So that's also an important consideration. Just make sure that you pass both your 1101 and 1102 exams before they retire on September 25th. That is your last day to take both of those exams. Don't wait until the 25th. My advice, don't wait until the 25th. You know, when we get closer to that point, we can talk about retake. You should look through the CompTIA retake policy, because you may want to schedule your exam on the 24th so that you could potentially take a retake on the 25th. Still, that's pretty tight. And and when you get that close to the final day, there may not be any slots available either in person or online. So you may find yourself ready to take the exam, but no way to take it, and it just naturally retires without you even having a chance. That's why I tell you, don't wait until the last minute. That's what happened with the last Network Plus update, is everybody waited until the last update. Same thing with Security+, and some people just weren't able to get a seat to take their exam, and then they had to restart. Ugh, just painful. That hurts me right there. Do not put yourself through that. That's just not something I'm comfortable with. Let's keep going through the list. I know I'm way over, but at this point, I'm just take a sip. It's just a drop in the bucket, right? Let's keep doing another question. We have so many questions that came through, so I want to do that. Okay. Do the other certifications, such as Security+ and Network Plus, also expire this year? Oh, thankfully, no. As someone who creates content for these certifications, I'm so glad they don't. Network Plus was just updated. The last version retired in December. So that's a brand new Network Plus exam. That's not going to update for another 3 years. And the Security+, I think, has another year before it retires. So plenty of ramp there too. So thankfully, no. The CompTIA website always tells you, we'll go to CompTIA.org and have a look at it. There's Chris Evans ready to take his exam. Let's have a look at the training or the certification side and look at Security+, for example. And when you go to these pages for the certification information, they tell you, if you scroll down a bit, they have an exam details section. Scroll. And in the exam details, it tells you when the launch date was. For a Security+, it was November 7th, 2023. And it says that the retirement is to be determined, usually 3 years. Technically, it's 3.5. Technically, 3.5 years after launch will be the retirement date. So you can go to November 7th, 2023, count 3.5 years, and that will be the estimated retirement date. And that's usually pretty close. You know, I estimated it to be October. CompTIA pulled it back just a little bit, made it September 25th. So that's a pretty good example of you can do a pretty good estimate based on the numbers that are already here. Just count that way. So for Security+, I keep a calendar on my side. Do I even have my calendar up? So for Security+, for example, expiration, it's retirement dates. So for retirement dates for Network Plus, I estimate retirement for that current version to be December of 2027. And then for Security Plus, I estimate that the retirement of the current version will be May of 2027. So you got plenty of time for both Network Plus, Security Plus. Those are questions I will not have to answer for a very long time because they're covered. We're good as far as that's concerned. So that's it. That is a good thing that we're not having a problem there to work through all the details of it. Let's very quickly, I want to get at least one more question in, and through the list of things. A lot of these I've already answered, so I apologize if your specific question was not covered in here, but some people are asking things like, is the CompTIA cert well accepted? And I think we kind of covered that when I said, go out and see what jobs are in your area, make your spreadsheet, get an idea of what certifications employers would like to see from you. In your area, it might be well accepted. In your area, it might not. It's very geographical. It's very specific. So make sure you do that too. Have a good idea. You do need to do a little bit of legwork here. Trying to get a job, you are in a fight. This is a battle against everybody else who's also trying to get that job. You need to have a strategy. You need to have knowledge of the type of jobs that are available in your particular geography. You need to go and figure out what type of companies are looking for these types of people, and what do these companies do? Being able to mention big projects that companies are working on always have some type of IT aspect to them. So that's why I want to really focus on those things as well. Let's keep going through this list of other things that people are asking about. This is quite a bit in this list. People are doing a lot of great stuff. We've talked a lot about retirement for the A+, so I'm kind of skipping over a number of those. Let's talk about career. This is one that, again, from my good friend Anonymous, who asks, can the A+ help jumpstart a career as a junior infrastructure engineer? This is, obviously, we're going to take a lot of liberties here because we don't have a job description of this, but a junior infrastructure engineer, we can think of somebody who is building a network or effectively, I say infrastructure, we're going to say that's your network. You are maintaining, managing, monitoring, keeping a network running, and in some cases, troubleshooting network problems. So that's a position I have been in myself. I started as a field service technician right out of college. I got a job working with a small computer company in South Miami. I got in my car every day, drove to customer sites, and installed memory, installed hard drives, replaced motherboards, installed printers. Sometimes I was just a glorified cable delivery person. They bought a printer, but the cable wasn't delivered with the printer, so I had to go out and deliver the cable. Here's your cable, ma'am. And would you like me to plug it in for you? I'd be glad to. Plug in the printer. Thank you so much. See you next time. That was my job. And I had a 4-year degree from a relatively decent college, Florida State University, in a business degree, a 4-year degree in business. And I was a cable delivery person. And I was happy to be that person. Because one of the things you get to do, though, is you get to learn things that are, you do have to do some of the type of grunt work. And you are entry level. Of course, you're going to have grunt work. It is expected. Who gets to deliver the cable? The new person gets to deliver the cable. The guy we just hired and the guy we don't pay very much. That's perfect. Go deliver this printer cable. Sir, yes, sir. Off I go. But that is where you learn, and that is where you meet people. I mentioned one of the best ways to get a job is somebody who works there. In my field delivery, it was field service. I was doing some service. Often it was field delivery. I would go meet people, these organizations. I was interacting directly with the IT departments of very large companies in my geography. And so I got to meet people at the big chemical company, the big medical supply company, the big cruise line company, the big insurance company. And one day I was thinking, this driving around South Florida during the day and listening to 610 IOD is not enough for me. I need to, instead of spending my time listening to Rick and Suds, why don't I instead get a job working in a company, like in a place where you drive in the morning and you stay there all day? That to me was fantastic. What a world that would be if I didn't have to drive around all day. And so I started putting resumes out, and then I started talking to people I was delivering cables to and installing hard drives for. And I said, I love this company. I love what you're doing here. I like where you work. I like the things you have, the things you're working with, the technologies you're working with. Do you ever hire entry-level techs? Do you ever hire someone who's familiar with these things? I'd love to put my resume in. And they said, yeah, give me a resume. And I ended up getting a job with one of those. So the customers I was already working with effectively took my resume and hired me for their corporate help desk. So that was my first way in to what eventually turned into a junior infrastructure engineer position. I didn't understand it at the time. I was really hired to be help desk. Most of what I did was Windows installation, Windows troubleshooting, Windows configurations, desktop management, and that slowly morphed into server management. So file servers, middleware, connectivity, and the connectivity part morphed into more networking, something I had no experience with. But this company had invested in this product called the Sniffer. Now it's sort of a common name we use for protocol analysis and packet capture. The Sniffer is a product, is a trademarked product that is now owned by NetScout. At the time, it was owned by Network General. And they said, yeah, you plug this into the network. They were all crowded around it. You plug this into the network and it shows you all the frames going through, and you can look at the packets inside of the frames. You can see everything happening inside of, you can see this device talking to that device. You can see and I was fascinated. I thought, this is incredible. This world that had been invisible to me up to this point, where I was just plugging in cables and hoping that Windows would work properly. I'd give it some IP addresses and have everything work properly. I had no idea that there was an entire world of communication happening inside of that cable. I thought it was maybe ones and zeros, but how could I make any sense of ones and zeros? And then you see this analysis tool that provides you with an English language description of everything going on inside of that cable. And I was smitten. I was immediately wanted to know more about that product. I said, where's the manual? I need to read the manual for this thing. And at the time, manuals were super well written. Say that, I guess it's all relative, right? I still find some good manuals here and there these days, but that manual was incredible. It stepped you through the entire philosophy of troubleshooting a network at the protocol level. It's fascinating. I need to find that manual. Maybe somebody's selling one on eBay or something. It was an amazing set of knowledge points that I started to use. And I found that I was able to find information on our corporate network that no one had ever seen before. Because although we had this product, no one was really trained on it. And nobody had really spent the time to really understand it. And this is where you really need to think about this in your IT career, is finding a niche can be incredibly valuable to your career. In this case, the niche was that I was able to understand this matrix-like screen of information that was flowing through. And I was one of those people that could look at that screen and go, oh, it's that machine right there. You see that just went by? There it is. There's your problem. Is that these things started to pop up on the screen and I could read it. It's like reading an EKG. But you have to be trained. You have to find a nurse who's trained in a 12-lead EKG who can really understand all of those little points. It's a similar idea for the Sniffer. I was able to read through this packet capture, and suddenly a world of knowledge was available to me that no one else could see. And they realized very quickly, we need to get you doing some networking stuff. So they brought me onto the networking team. They still had me with the Sniffer, and I started doing more with switches, doing more with routers, doing more with high-end fiber connectivity. We were doing quite a bit. Now, these days, of course, Sniffer still exists, but because there is so much open source availability, at the time we didn't have a Wireshark, but now we do. If you want the same level of knowledge or a similar level of knowledge, not quite the same, the Sniffer still is light years beyond what Wireshark can even do today. But if you just want to be able to capture packets, there's a world of information there that you will be able to apply not just to the world of networking, but it is valuable for operating systems, it's valuable for the cloud, and it's super valuable for security. So if you're looking at getting into the world of IT security, you should learn as much as you can about every operating system you can get your hands on. You should learn as much as you can about the network and how to configure it, how to plan it, how to design it, how to implement it, and how to read those packets. Because that is a great niche to find. Now, it may not be packets that's your niche. Maybe Linux is your niche. Maybe cloud technology is your niche. Whatever it is, find the thing that interests you and dive into it. One of the great things about IT is once you have created a knowledge base for yourself and you've built on that foundation, you've leveled up into the world of IT, into different types of technologies. Now you know Windows. Now you know Linux. Now you've added some protocol decodes and packet captures. Now you're applying some security techniques to that. Now you're really got a valuable skill set that you can use to get a job or get a better job. So in your world of wanting to jumpstart, you have to start at the bottom. This is the age-old story. If you want to be CEO, one of the best things you can do is start in the mailroom. And it is absolutely true that you need to start with the basics of technology and use those building blocks to start creating a much larger foundation for yourself. A+ is a great place to start. That is one of the reasons that I use that on my website as a way to teach people how to get into IT, because it is a great first step into the world of technology. Same thing with Network+, same thing with Security+, and we're looking at adding others as the year goes on. But I want to give people the ability to get that job or get that better job. And I think building a foundation is a key part of that. So often people just want to jump into cybersecurity. They go, how do I just start in cybersecurity? I said, how much do you know about operating systems? Nothing. How much do you know about networking? Nothing. Well, how do you plan on getting a job in IT security when you have no idea how to secure any of those things? You don't even know how they work. Forget just securing it. How does Linux even work? How does Windows even work? How does the network even operate? How are you able to secure those unless you have not just that basic level of knowledge, but you really have an expertise in that particular area? And that is what you really need if you plan to move up into the world of cybersecurity, or in your case, which I love, junior infrastructure engineer. Because I think the network was a great gateway for me into almost any other part of IT. So if you're someone who's interested in finding that way to get to that section that isn't another part of IT, I think the network gives probably more than any other technology that you will work with. That is the one that everything comes back to. Probably mostly because everything that you're going to be working with touches the network. They touch the wireless network, they touch the wired network, and it's whether you're working in the cloud, whether you're working in Linux, you're working with Windows Server, you got web servers, you got a big data center, you got AI functionality, you've got cybersecurity. It's all connected to the network. So I found that to be one of the most important parts of my foundation. I still needed to know Windows. I still needed to know Linux. I still needed to know Mac OS. But that networking piece really gave me a jumping off point that allowed me to go in a lot of different directions if I wanted to. And it's technology that you will be able to use for the rest of your career. It's a knowledge base that never goes stale. I don't do much with Windows XP anymore. There's not much Windows 3.1 I can really go back and work with. But the technology of that Windows, understanding how Windows operates, understanding the registry in Windows XP is effectively the same as the registry in Windows 11. The same concepts apply. Obviously, it's a little different as we move from one to the other, but the differences are minor, and I can easily adjust to that because I understand the base technology. So if there's something that you're interested in doing, like junior infrastructure engineer, go download Wireshark, go install a firewall and get it running. Go get Cisco's packet tracer. If you don't have Wireshark and packet tracer, those two things you should get today. Go get packet tracer. It's free. You have to register to get it, but it is free. No cost out of your pocket. And it's a very valuable tool. It's an incredible tool, and it gives you a lot of flexibility. And you can even integrate it to some degree to Wireshark so that you can do things in Packet Tracer and then use those to visually see what's going on. Most of it you can visually see in Packet Tracer itself, but the same concepts apply. That is probably my best advice to you, is to don't be afraid to work hard. Don't be afraid to start at the bottom, but start building your foundation. Pick something, learn everything you can possibly learn about that technology, and then go to the next one and just keep building on it, building on it, and building on it. Before long, they're going to be asking you to build their networks for them. You're not going to have to beg them at all to be a junior infrastructure engineer. They're going to want you to do it for them because you will be one of the few people with that knowledge that nobody else really has. Well, I think that at that point, I think I've talked too much, not just about that topic, which is probably true, but kind of in general. We've gone way over time on this one, but I sure appreciate you hanging with us. That's probably a great place to finish up for us today. Thank you so much for joining us in our first hour of the study group. Don't forget, we have another study group planned for 2 days from now, on Thursday, for the Core 2 exam, where I get to answer a lot of the questions again about the migration between the two. So there will be a little bit of overlap on that study group, but don't worry. I think now that you've got it, it's not going to be a problem for most of us, and we'll be able to give you an overview of the 1102 content when we get to that one. Don't forget that we're on our Discord when we're not here live. We'd love for you to join us. It is at professormesser.com/Discord. We got a lot more coming over the next number of months. This is an exciting time. We're so glad you're here to join us and see how all of this new content gets rolled out, and we continue with our A+ certification courses. Thank you so much for joining us. We'll see you next time, probably Thursday, on the A+ study group. Thanks, everybody.